Welcome everyone to the VCS English as we're getting ready for day 2 of week 4. And we're kicking things off with 𝘀👫 against 𝘀👏. On the analyst desk with me, I have 𝘀🗶💀 and Tim. Rebel, I'm gonna wait. Who is it on? There are people on the It's Wednesday morning. Things are not going well in the 𝘀𝗀cie household. Well, whichever analysts are on with me, we're going to be jumping on in to discuss 𝘀👫 against 𝘀👏 because 𝘀👏 are looking very good in the split so far. They're undefeated. And I'm just going to hazard a guess. I'm going to say Tim is on the analyst desk with me. Tim, would you like to talk a little bit about 𝘀👏?
Yeah, I can't talk about 𝘀👏. Should I also tell you who the other analyst is?
No, I think that should be a surprise.
Okay, that's just a surprise box. I mean, yes, 𝘀👏, they have been so far dominating the league. Everybody was like, yeah, at some point they're just gonna fall off a bit at least. But they've continuously been playing very, very well and have been basically winning everything. So I'm interested to see if they will drop a series. I'm not sure. I think do they still play 𝘀𝗀? Did they actually win twice?
Yes, they're playing against
They
𝘀𝗀
still
on
play.
Sunday.
Yes, yeah, on Sunday. I think that's a match to look out for, right? Seeing who wins that. I think 𝘀𝗀 is the only team that so far now looks like they can contest after the week 1 where they fumbled a bit. But other than that, I think 𝘀𝗀 is more or less unbeatable.
And 𝘀𝗀cie, a little bit like myself on the hosting desk today, 𝘀👫 have been dropping the ball a little bit in the preseason patch. They started off fantastically. They had, what was it, 6 wins and a loss, or 5 wins and a loss. And that last week, sure, they were able to pick up a couple of or a series win, but they looked really sketchy when they played against Flash in Secret, picking up 2-1 wins. What's going wrong for them?
They don't really have a good read on the preseason patch, and yeah, just as you mentioned, they are performing as good as their fan is currently on hosting the analyst desk. But aside from that, 𝘀👫, I mean, you just mentioned it. I mean, they only won 2-1 against Secret and Flash. They also lost 2-0 to 𝘀𝗀, which is not surprising, but they also looked awful in those losses. I mean, you can look good in losses and you can look bad in losses, and it was the former for Team 𝘀👫. And yeah, so today it should be like a must-win for 𝘀👏. It's just another day on the job. But 𝘀👫, I mean, they still went 5-2 in the first half of the split. So there's definitely some promise on this team. And I think also like 𝘀𝗀, their top laner, hasn't looked completely bad. So there is always a little bit of hopium left for them. But they are, of course, the clear underdogs coming into the series.
And Tim, I want to go back to you and I want to kind of talk about the matchup to look out for. Are we looking towards this jungle matchup again, 𝘀👏 against 𝘂o?
I mean, we have to. I think, like looking at the entire VCS jungle, I think is always the matchup to look out for. And then specifically, I'm always looking also like how are the solo laners gonna be performing against each other, because if you want to play jungle, yes, you can probably solo carry the team if you have at least 1 or 2 lanes to play around. And I think for 𝘀👫 specifically, as mentioned before, I think that's 𝘀👏. He has usually, even in their losses, looked the best. And I think if 𝘀👏 wants to do something, he wants to do it through top lane.
Okay. Going back to you, 𝘀👏, looking over at 𝘀👏, they had a bit of a shaky series against Team Secret. It was their most recent series as well. They were able to win it 2-0, but there were various points when watching that series, you thought maybe Secret at worst take a game off 𝘀👏. Maybe they could take it 2, but 𝘀� managed to hold the fort down. Do you think that that shaky series could maybe be giving 𝘀👫 some hope?
I think actually it could, because with 𝘀𝗀 looking pretty crisp recently, maybe 𝘀👏 by now starts to feel some sort of pressure that 𝘀𝗀 might catch up if they would have like one off day and lose a series, and then they play 𝘀𝗀 also later in this week. So if you lose one series now on the side of 𝘀👏, you might as well just be in a position where you really hardly have to defend your position against 𝘀𝗀 later in this week. And this is something that might just be creeping into the backs of their minds a little bit. And maybe also we have seen some signs of pressure shown by them. Like, for example, Artemis last series wasn't too hot. Also against SBTC, he was getting 2v2'd by, I think it was Fear and Celebrity in the bot lane. And that is also something we do not expect of our star boy AD carry in Artemis. And gotta say so, even in their rough games, they still all look okay on the side of 𝘀👏. So it's not the end of the world that they have looked shaky in a win, because they're still 9-0 in the VCS, and that of course speaks in massive favor of them.
And Tim, talking about essentially this battle for the top of the standings between 𝘀𝗀 and 𝘀𝗏, 𝘀𝗀 have been looking decent. Okay, maybe their recent series have not been the cleanest, but they picked up the 2-0 against 𝘀𝗏, and that's what matters for them. So we have this big matchup coming up on Sunday, but even if 𝘀𝗀 win that, they still trail 𝘀𝗏 by a win in the standings, which means that 𝘀𝗏, they don't have any room to make errors, because if they drop a game and 𝘀𝗀 haven't, all of a sudden, that series on Sunday determines who's going to be first heading into playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, at least before the last week's performance, I think if you had asked me who can maybe also take a game off 𝘀𝗏, it would have been 𝘀𝗏cie. But the last week's performances, even though they won 2 series and only lost to 𝘀𝗀, they really didn't look great in any of the 3 series. So I think 𝘀𝗀 is still hoping, of course, for 𝘀𝗏cie to just come back to form, to find their own, and then just win against 𝘀𝗏. I think they can maybe find some advantages and then play from there, but it's not going to be easy.
And to go back to you, 𝘀𝗀cie, we are in the second half of the round robin, or the second round robin, if you will, which means that these two teams have played before. 𝘀𝗏cie against 𝘀𝗏 happened in their first games of week 2, and 𝘀𝗏 absolutely thrashed 𝘀𝗏cie. It was 2-0, it wasn't even close. Do you think 𝘀𝗏 can pull that off again, or do you think the fact that that previous series happened on an older patch could potentially leave room for some changes heading into this series?
I mean, my short answer would be yes, they can absolutely just do that again. And I mean, I want to elaborate a little bit on the reasoning here, because I mean, it's obvious it's a new patch. 𝘀𝗏cie hasn't looked hot on it at all so far. 𝘀𝗏, not the hottest. They have looked all split, but they still look kind of good, I would say, overall. And with 𝘀𝗏cie, I mean, where's really the win con for them is what we have to ask. I mean, they have 𝘁𝗏𝗏, who has looked pretty decent with good laning stats, but he's also facing 𝘬𝗨 this time, who might just be able to just stand tall against him either way. And their only really clear edge, I would say, might be the top lane encoded, because I mean, whether 𝘁 or 𝑃OS is playing, let's be honest, likely it will be 𝘁 playing. They both haven't looked too hot on the side of 𝘀𝗏, and they are like the clear weak side of this team.
And Tim, to go back to you, do you think this is a case of 𝘀𝗏cie? Okay, they just have to play around topside. They have to try to get coated and 𝘁𝗏 ahead, and see if they can then convert that lead towards the rest of the map.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the play they want to go for. I think coated has been one of the best top laners. Probably before the 𝘀𝗀 series, I would have told you that I found them to be the best top laner so far, performing all around. The problem was that then he didn't look too great against 𝘁𝗏. It was a really 50-50 matchup. He did a lot of mistakes, so I'm not too sure on that statement now, but I still think that if they have a win condition against 𝘀𝗏, it is going to be through topside, because I think 𝘀𝗏's weakest position right now is the top lane, and it's on the other side 𝘀𝗏cie is strongest, and I think the biggest difference in favor of 𝘀𝗏cie is up there. So I want to see 𝘁𝗏, I want to see 𝘁𝗏𝗏s just going up there all the time, play a strong topside and just stobble the game through there.
𝘀𝗀cie, one thing I want to bring to you, and this is more of a personal opinion, I guess. Whenever I've seen 𝘀𝗏 struggling in a game, whenever I've seen 𝘀𝗏 look like, okay, maybe they don't win this, to me, it's never about, oh, someone got ahead against 𝘁 or someone got ahead against 𝘬𝗨. It's always someone is coming out even in lane or ahead of 𝘁𝗏. Do you think that statement holds any truth? And do you think, if that is the case for 𝘀𝗏cie, maybe they do have to abandon this, let's play around coated and get coated ahead, and say, no, if we want to win this game, we need to keep 𝘁𝗏 out of it?
There might be some truth to it. I mean, it's just the general volatility of the bot lane, I would say. It's nothing like personal about the players with 𝘁𝗏 and 1OP. I mean, they had looked pretty hot individually in most of the games. In some, they really haven't. And we just see that 𝘁 is playing and not 𝑃OS, which is kind of, I would say, disappointing for me, because I wanted to see 𝑃OS this time, just because it would be a bit more fun like this, because then you'd see 𝑃OS again, and there's a little bit more of an upset chance for 𝘀𝗏𝗏ie like this. So, I mean, maybe you just have to play on the bot lane because of what you just said, and maybe the volatility part is just a general part of the bot lane where you just have to put some focus on.
Well, Tim, we are in to pick some bans, and we are seeing those focus bans towards the junglers, 2 jungle bans from both sides. And regardless of that, it's still going to be a jungler first locked in. For the side of Cerberus, the 𝘂𝗀 in for 𝘂𝗀.
Yeah, I like the 𝘂𝗀. Usually you want to go for either very aggressive junglers like 𝘁𝗶𝗺 who can 3-camp into gank, or you want to go for something that can rather farm it up. And I think the 𝘂𝗀 is the latter option and a very strong one. And on the other side, now we see Caitlyn TF. And we talked about them playing around Coated. I think Coated is going to play weak side duty already. I mean, if you have Caitlyn TF, it's most likely going to be TF just going bot lane permanently.
And 𝘀cie, I really like the fact this Caitlyn's locked in, because it was 𝘁𝗻𝑎 who kind of started this whole trend of playing Caitlyn in the VCS back when everyone was on Jhin Misfortune meta. And I like the fact that Wits picked it up. It goes into what we were saying about don't let 𝘁𝗻𝑎 get ahead. And when you've got the Caitlyn, it becomes very difficult as the opposing ADC to generate a lead.
I have a mixed opinion about this. For once, I like that Bit is coming away from the Jhin pick, which is something it's also a recent trend with him. But he also gave away Jinx fresh to 𝘁𝗻𝑎 in 1 OP, and this might just be a recipe for disaster, I would say. But they also like have a plan around their own bot lane with the Caitlyn Morgana. I mean, Morgana against Thresh is like more of a skill matchup. It's not that much of a hard counter against the Thresh as one might initially think because of the Black Shield mechanic. But there's also some outplay potential there for 1 OP to like use the Flay auto attack to break down the Black Shield and then go for a Flay or Hook to just still land the CC onto them. So it's not a matchup that is doomed at all for 𝘁𝗻𝑎 and 1 OP, and Jinx might just be the best AD carry on the patch. So I'm looking forward to see 𝘁𝗻𝑎's carry again. But there's also another player I want to highlight a little bit more. Ego on this 𝘂𝗀. I mean, 𝘂𝗀 might just be the most broken jungler if you are the better jungler, and Ego so far is maybe even the best player in the VCS Winter Split.
And just to touch back on that point about Jinx, I believe it was 𝘁𝗶𝗶 saying in the cast yesterday, Jinx strongest champion on the patch as a whole, not even in that bottom lane. Either way, Jinx incredibly strong as we head into the second round of bans here, Tim. And we're getting a few top lane bans being focused away against Coated.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. He has a counter pick, so they're taking away like strong counter pick top laners. This kind of looks like they might be going for a Gnar or a Jayce on the side of Cerberus. And since I was not being hovered, I would also I think I'm a Nocturne enjoyer. I think Nocturne is really strong on this patch, and 𝘀𝗀 kind of gives me says the same. And I would have really liked Nocturne with the comp that 𝘀𝗀 so far had, but it's going to be the Kindred. So second AD carry locked in. Together with TF, you have a very strong early jungle mid duo, but it also means you have no front line so far. So Coated probably has to go on tank duty.
And 𝘀cie, we said as well that maybe Coated would be playing a weak side. You still got a couple of those champions like the Gnar available, but it all comes down to what Cerberus want to put Pun on. We've got the Ryze locked in for Yadow in the mid lane, and it is just Pun left to lock in.
It is, and I'm just gonna ask myself there, where Victor? Victor is so strong in this patch. Play Victor, please. It's not banned by any team. It's not picked away that TF was coming out for Blazes, which means that they are likely going to play on the bot lane or play a little bit more on the global focus of things. And yeah, I'm just wondering what might just be the last pick also for Coated. Considering that Caitlyn and Camilla already banned, maybe it even goes towards the Renekton back again, which is something I do not like to see. But maybe with weak siding, it might make some sense. But yeah, as Coach Tim just said, Jayce and Gnar are still picks you can play here. I would actually prefer the Gnar here because you likely are not going to play around the Jayce. And if you're not playing around the Jayce, you're playing Jayce wrongly. So please pick something like Gnar.
𝘁𝗀.
Ooh, 𝘁𝗀.
It is.
Okay.
It is. Please just. It's
another 𝘂𝗀.
What?
So we just have
Guys,
two
we're going
𝘂𝗀.
back to you remember Faker? What is that? Z against Z. We've now got 𝘂𝗀 against 𝘂𝗀. Okay, so I'll be honest. This isn't something that I've seen. I will be honest with our viewers. It's probably a bug.
Wait, really?
I'm not expecting two 𝘂𝗀s in this game. And if we have two 𝘂𝗀s, I really want to know what the top laner is. Wait, but the problem is that
Twisted Fate top lane 𝘂𝗀 support.
Wait, they didn't. 99% they didn't even first pick 𝘂𝗀, did they? It's just both top laners are 𝘂𝗀s.
Do you think that's a Gragas jungle then, or do you think they first picked? So
no,
do you think that's a Gnar then?
I don't think
know.
That has to be 𝘂𝗀.
I mean, either honestly, like
Yeah, Luxury
Yeah.
Viego has to be phased.
Okay,
because-
no, Ego has swapped. Okay, so it's probably one non-fake Viego and one fake Viego. The big question is, what did they actually play in top lane? I'm hoping for the 𝘁𝗀𝗃.
You know what the weird thing is here, 𝘀𝗃cie and Tim? Luxury haven't like moved their champions around, so right now it's like a Killer Queen playing Caitlyn jungle.
I think
Yeah,
something is a bit
they are-
broken in draft.
So
Maybe they aren't in order
okay.
and the overlay is just bugging around for them and they just are all on the right positions, but the Viego is just a different pick, let's be honest. I mean, what can
Look-
we assume there? Maybe it's 𝘁𝗀𝗃, it's a Jace or
Viego
𝘁.
begins with VI, right? So it's Victor.
Victor top into 𝘁𝗃. That doesn't sound like a good matchup. I like Victor top. I think it's hidden OP. I think it has very good matchups and it scales insane. Problem with that is nothing to 𝘁𝗃, man. Like it really not.
I swear, if we load into Rift and there are 2 Viegos, I'm gonna be loving life.
I'm really interested what I really want to know
Maybe
what top lane is, because if they pick a
𝘁𝗃.
good top laner, if they picked a good top laner here, their team comp might be viable. If they didn't pick a good top laner here, their team comp sucks. So because
So who are the good top laners then that they could take instead of this Viego?
I think like Ornn is decently okay. I don't like it. I think you want to have a defensive top lane tank here. Like 𝘁𝗃, I think 𝘁𝗃 is insane. Like everybody on the other team is immobile, and stuff like Viego really does badly into 𝘁𝗃 because the silence, and same for Ryze because he has to get into silence range basically. And you have decent damage to take down 𝘁𝗃, but like if Jinx just stands still for an ult attack, it's so easy to hit Q. So I think overall 𝘁𝗃 probably would be the best option, and he has a decently good matchup into 𝘁𝗃. Like it's a 50-50 matchup, and you also have the option to go AP if you're in a good spot, or you go full tank. So I think best top lane here by far 𝘁𝗃.
What I'm sensing here, Tim, is that you are preferring this luxury draft if it is a 𝘁𝗃 in the top lane. 𝘀𝗀cie, where do you stand on the draft?
I assume it's not a 𝘁𝗃 because that's something that hasn't been played so far in the split. I just assume it's one of the more standard picks for the VCS, which would be the 𝘁. I would also like the 𝘁𝗃, by the way. Don't get me wrong there. But I just assume it's a 𝘁 on the side of 𝘁𝗃 to just have him on a pick that can beat the Gragas, but likely won't beat him by much, if at all, because Gragas also has decent counterplay against the mini 𝘁, where you can just chunk him out with his barrels and sustain back up with his passive on his own. But assuming it is a 𝘁 or it's just any other weak side top laner they pick, I overall think Luxury has, of course, the tools to win this game, but I think Ego on Viego is pretty illegal, and Jinx Fresh in the bot lane is the best bot lane you can pick, and I think that alone will net 𝘁𝗏 the win, although I gotta say the Luxury draft is not bad at all.
Okay. So we're still not into game, which suggests that there are some issues going on, which are probably revolving around the fact that for anyone tuning in, there are 2 Viegos on screen. One of those is real, one of those is fake. It's almost like playing against a _𝘁𝗃 right now, Tim. You've got to work out which is the real one. We think it's the 𝘁𝗃 Viego that is the real one, as I don't know what else to bring up, because Luxury have looked shaky, and
Yeah.
𝘀𝗀cie's already said they've got the tools to be able to take down 𝘁𝗃, but it's 𝘁𝗃. So we end up in this classic VCS situation of will the worst draft win?
First of all, we have to figure out what is the worst draft. I think so much actually bangs on this top laner, because if they pick like I don't know, like Renekton, the typical VCS Renekton there, then I think me and 𝘀𝗀cie can agree that the draft is awful and they're probably gonna win. But if they actually pick the good top laner there, then they probably have the better draft and they lose. So yeah.
Okay.
And also usually there isn't a clearly worse draft, let's be honest. I mean, if there's like a clear winner of the draft, it would just be one of the coaches trolling or one of the teams having a really suboptimal champion pool. But yeah, I would agree. If it would be a Renekton, the draft of Luxury would likely be the worst draft. But even the Renekton I wouldn't completely hate, actually, because they likely aren't going to path topside much either way. Gotta say, so I would still prefer a 𝘁𝗃, prefer a 𝘁 there for Luxury. And Luxury, just as you said, doesn't really have like a good recent trend, so to say. And 𝘁𝗏 is likely also not going to make it easy for them, no matter what they pick.
I'm trying to work out if we should throw to a break before bringing in a Rebel and heading into game, because we don't quite know exactly how long this delay is going to be. So we're going to jump on into a short break, folks, and then when we return, hopefully, but we will be heading into a short break and then returning in a bit to jump on into the Rift for the opening game between the side of Cerberus and 𝘀🐶. Stay tuned. We are back, folks, and well, we know what the 𝘀𝗀𝗀 is now, Tim and 𝘀cie. It's actually a 𝘀🐁, and Tim, considering that you wanted a 𝘁𝗶𝗶𝗏, I'm going to presume you're not happy with this one.
I wanted something that is a frontline. I mean, so I think 𝘀🐶 will win because they have now a much worse draft. I think so. I believe them to win.
Okay.
Good reasoning. About the 𝘀𝗀, it's probably like the champion that got released after 𝘀𝗀𝗀, so it was next to something in some kind of list, so that's why the 𝘀𝗀𝗀 was shown earlier. That is what I'm expecting here. But speaking of the 𝘀𝗀, I don't like it because you now have two side lanes you want to play towards, and I think you can only pick one of them, and the other one will likely fall apart. So I think 𝘀𝗀𝗏 isn't really doing themselves a favor with this 𝘀𝗀 pick.
Tim, I just want to give potentially a quick excuse for 𝘀𝗀𝗏. Is this a case of saying, hey, we've got Caitlyn Morgana, we've got this early game damage, but we want to have a late game insurance policy, so we're going for the 𝘀𝗀? Could that be one of the reasons why they picked this?
Yeah, I guess. I really don't know. Like, I don't think there's a reason to pick 𝘀𝗀 here. I think it isn't great against the champions that were picked. Especially 𝘀𝗏 usually does very well because he's low range but has a lot of burst and DPS. So whenever 𝘀𝗀 goes in, her W doesn't really do anything against 𝘀𝗏 because it's so easy for him to just kill her anyways. And then yes, it's nice against 𝘁𝗀, but against everything else isn't great. I think the 𝘀𝗀 really doesn't have any redeeming qualities here.
Well, Coach Tim, non-Coach 𝘀𝗀𝗏, thank you very much for your thoughts. We're going to be jumping on into game and we'll be grabbing your thoughts after this game draws to a close. And that means I get to bring in Rebel. Rebel, you've been waiting patiently on the side for a very long time and you finally get to talk. How are you doing?
Doing good. Long break to be able to take in the composition, and they left us with a 𝘀𝗀 in the top lane as opposed to the 𝘀𝗀𝗀. I always like the potential of old school blind picking, but we're not in Game 5 of a best of 5 series, so it wasn't likely the case as it is.
Is that how it used to work? Game 5 would be blind pick.
That's right. Yeah, it used to be. I think it was in the league best of 3s, and the third game was a blind pick, or it was best of 5s, and the fifth game was a blind pick. Yeah.
Okay. Well, before my time, I only started really watching League back in Season 7, I think. Started playing in Season 6. But there we go. Both junglers actually starting on the top side of the map, and that means we get to see some juicy action towards this bottom side. Also could potentially point out 𝘁𝗛𝗏 starting with the cleanse.
Yeah, wanting to make sure that there are ways to prevent what is likely to be an onslaught from 𝘀𝗀𝗏 on the bottom side of the map. So to point out what 𝘀𝗀𝗏's composition is trying to do here, they're really leaning into the let's fight 𝘁𝗏𝗏. I know you guys talked about it on the desk. They've got Caitlyn, which is something that likes to snowball and set up siege as much as possible. Although if you actually note, heal has already been burned on bottom side down.
Ronop's dead. Now 𝘁𝗏𝗏 is running. So that's first blood for H3.
Yes, that's correct.
𝘁𝗏𝗏's managed to get a kill. So is that overall win for Cerberus because they got the gold on the ADC?
Back and forth a little bit. I think early in the lane phase, it doesn't matter that much. It depends on H3's first buy here, because 300 gold is enough for boots. So you have a little bit of leniency to be able to affect the remainder of the map. But the whole intention of taking the Caitlyn is you want to play for lane. So ultimately, I think the 𝘁𝗀𝗏 getting the kill is optimal here for the side of Cerberus, and the Morgana not so much during the course of that. This was really interesting because we saw immediately this 𝘀𝗀𝗏 kind of led to the heal and the ignite being dropped immediately onto 𝘁𝗏𝗏. How in the world did they end up losing this situation? 𝘁𝗏𝗏 got a little antsy. Yeah, that's really unfortunate right there for them to actually lose that. Amazing cleanse, by the way, by 𝘁𝗏𝗏, not getting CC'd up and immediately using that kind of boost as much as possible alongside the excited to get away from the Morgana, so there's no second trade kill.
Well, Killer Queen is just going straight on 𝘂𝗀 as soon as he shows up onto this red buff. So much damage coming down. 𝘂𝗀𝗀's going to smile onto the red buff for some help. Killer Queen will land the auto. 𝘂𝗀𝗀 dies inside his own jungle. And 𝘀𝗀𝗏 are not here to play. They start this game off with a bang, Rebel.
Now, Paige is out of the book from what we saw from Secret just a week ago. Number one, shut down ego. This was one of the biggest things. DMK had an amazing game just last week when it came to that one-on-one matchup, and 𝘀𝗰𝗄 throws off the gauntlet, says, okay, I'm taking the Kindred. I'm going to play into the face of ego as much as I can in this game because he has been grading for this 𝘂ego pick, and no one has really put that challenge onto him. This is the first time we've seen it. This is 𝘀𝗰𝗄 going back to some of the roots in the early week, going for this counter-jungling style, catches ego what seemed like very off guard. Not to mention the pushing power they had on bottom side. 𝘁𝑐E was the first one to be able to support here, doesn't actually end up landing that cube, was perfectly placed to be able to catch him right there. And the support from the Twisted Fate was around as well, as ego gets caught once again with his hand in the cookie jar, trying to respond to 𝘀𝗰𝗄's pressure in the opposite side jungle.
And I really like what Blazes just did, because ego trying to go into 𝘀𝗰𝗄's jungle, as you mentioned, death sentence sidestep well by 𝘁. There is a black shield dropped anyway. Now ego looking towards the mid lane. That's a gold card coming through, but 𝘀𝗰𝗄 joining into the party. Blazes down to 200 HP, but ego is just taking up all the damage from 𝘀𝗰𝗄, trying to get on top of Blazes, but will get taken down, and 𝘀𝗰𝗄 picks up a second kill off the game. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, 𝘁 just getting run down. 𝘁𝑚𝑖𝑠 is going to be able to pick up the kill. Gets excited, death sentence lands onto 𝘁𝗃, and the bottom lane of 𝘀𝗏 are popping off. It's a 3-0 Jinx inside of 5 minutes.
Okay, not the intention that was supposed to be had from 𝘀𝗀𝗄's bottom lane, right? I love this game plan from the likes of 𝘀𝗀𝗄 being aggressive into ego, making sure that's going to get shut out, and then also assisting Blazes in some of this early game to have this effect. But their bottom lane is ruining things for them right now. I don't know why the black shield was so late from the side of 𝘁3. He's fishing, was able to get a solid play. Yeah, why are you stepping up right there? It's such a terrible situation to be in right there, where 𝘁 is stepping up to try to punish 𝘁𝗻𝑖s right in the face of what is the CC from the likes of the Thresh, as well as the chompers that come in, and it's just punishment coming out. It's just a typical outplay that's coming out from 𝘁𝗻𝑖s and 𝘀𝗁 dominating the laning phase. If this weren't going that badly, this early game would be humongous for the side of 𝘀𝗀𝗄 already in the earlier stages, but this bottom lane is keeping things within striking distance. It's not okay.
And what did we say during picks and bans? 𝘀𝗀𝗄 want to be getting 𝘁𝗻𝑖s behind. They want to be shutting him out of the game. You don't beat Cerberus, you beat 𝘁𝗻𝑖s. That gives you the win. And so far, 𝘁𝗻𝑖s, well, he's looking very happy. He's got himself a noon quiver and a pickaxe. 𝘁 with just 2 long swords and a dagger.
Now, it's also a matter of now ego can actually start looking potentially to start trying to punish this top lane matchup between the two. And that's exactly what he's going to do as he comes up for the likes of Coded, trying to support Pun a little bit during the course of this laning phase. This Gragas is good into the Gwen's laning phase very easily. There's a number of things that you can do to interact with the champion. The one kind of interaction that goes against you is that ultimate. So that's why the 𝘂ego likes to also kind of get close, be able to actually work around that W from the likes of Coded. And now that you're attacking the other side of the map, and now that you have this strong Jinx, you have 2 stronger sides of the map if the 𝘂ego is able to actually kind of transition into that phase relatively unscathed. This is where 𝘀𝗀𝗄's probably going to get put to the test. It's all about his control of both the Dragon Pit, something that we're curious about whether 𝘀𝗀𝗄 can make this swap onto the neutral objective control for the new season, or whether he decides to, okay, am I going to salvage bottom lane? Am I going to counterattack on the top side? 𝘀𝗀𝗄's playing chess right now, and it's his move.
𝘀𝗀𝗄 might very well be playing chess, and it's just seemed to be always his move. No matter what ego does, 𝘀𝗀𝗄 is able to do something and then do something else. And for those of you who know chess, that is called a 𝘂𝗰𝗄𝗀. I'm sure 𝘀𝗀𝗄 and Tim will understand what that means because it's got German origins. But for those chess people out there, you know what I'm talking about. Either way, 𝘀𝗀𝗄 and Cerberus at 3 kills to 3, and they find themselves nearly 1,000 gold ahead. That big question mark, though, is still on this bottom lane. What can a 3-0 Jinx do in the early stages of the game?
Well, at this point, it doesn't really matter what the Jinx is able to accomplish in the laning phase, although 𝘁𝗻𝑖s and 𝘁𝗁 seem to think otherwise, they just continue to lay down the aggression to 𝘁 and 𝘁3. It's more of a matter of, again, not only is 𝘁𝗁𝗻𝑖s getting ahead in this game, which is really important because the Jinx is both incredibly strong and 𝘁𝗁𝗻𝑖s is kind of the crux for this team, but also you think about what the Caitlyn is supposed to be, and it's supposed to be a much earlier game champion that you can work around sieging for towers and tower plates, and here 𝘀𝗀𝗄 doesn't have that option, which is why 𝘀𝗀𝗄's on it.
𝘀𝗀𝗄 shows up to the bottom lane. 𝘁𝗻𝑖s is low. There is a Destiny charge. A Destiny channeled. It will be for Ron OP because 𝘀𝗀𝗄 has picked up the kill. The Destiny has been cancelled. I believe that would have been a 𝘂𝗀𝗄 actually doing that with the Rune Prison. But down will go Ron OP. 𝘀𝗀𝗄 are not sitting around. 𝘀𝗀𝗄 getting the kill and getting the shutdown onto 𝘁𝗁𝗻𝑖s is huge.
This is 𝘀𝘀cie saying we're not going to slow down and play the pace that Cerberus always wants to play with compositions like this. Last week, this was the same thing that happened with Secret. The difference was they weren't able to shut down the gold generation that was coming about into the early and mid stages of the game. And so Cerberus was able to stay within kind of a shooting range of where they needed to be in order to compete with the side of Secret for the late game team fighting where they're always going to be superior. 𝘀𝘀cie says we got to put the pedal to the metal as fast as possible and make sure we're controlling as much as we can. Here, 𝘀𝗰𝗏, they first start off with the gank in the bottom side, the dragon control, helping out 𝘁𝗍𝗋𝗍. This whole bottom side is starting to become just hunting grounds for the Kindred to be able to operate in the earlier phases of the game. And that specifically is going to help shut down 𝘁𝑚𝑖s gold income, which is going to be helpful for the team fighting. And hopefully it's going to be enough to help 𝑽t get into this game, especially when 𝘁𝗍𝗋 starts to get out and about with this Twisted Fate ultimate around the map and start helping himself. Even better, on top of all of this, 𝘂𝑑 is doing fine in the laning phase against 𝑃uN. This is turning into more of just a sandbag kind of farm type lane between the two of these members, and that means that I think 𝘂𝑑 is going to feel perfectly fine about that. No exploitation, no ability for the 𝑣ego to come up here and try to punish the Gwen whatsoever. Instead, it's just going to be a Gwen who gets out of this laning phase relatively unscathed.
And what we wanted in the top lane for the side of 𝘀𝘀cie was 𝘂𝑑 to be on something weak side, something to be able to absorb the pressure. Well, he's going into a Gragas, he's got a 10 CS lead. I'd say he's absorbed whatever pressure has been thrown at him. We saw 𝘂𝑒go making a passing swing by towards the top lane, and now H3, he's on roaming duty with 𝘀𝗏𝗏. Gold card comes through, Dark Binding's gonna land. Does 𝘀𝗏𝗏 want to go for this? No, they're able to burn the flash from Yado, and it's a flash for flash traded between the two mid laners.
It is, but again, you have this roaming band of the combination now H3 alongside 𝘀𝗏𝗏, and that means that it's much more dangerous to lose your flash in this particular case if you're Yado, because the Ryze just doesn't have great ways to defend himself against what is a gold card onslaught, the Morgana binding, anything like that, outside of just having to stay back in the laning phase. And that's going to open up 𝘁𝑍𝑎𝑠 to attack more of the map pretty much across the board, which is the ideal situation for 𝘀𝘀cie. They're doing fine everywhere. They're really not in a position in any lane outside of the fact that 𝘁𝑚𝑖s has 3 kills, but the Jinx still has a minute before it really starts to ramp up, and their ability to take team fights also then just kind of gets pulled into question as to whether 𝘁𝑚 and 𝘀uN are able to actually generate that kind of engagement necessary for a 5-on-5 to really be feasible here for 𝘁𝑚𝑖s to really start doing the damage he can on this champion.
𝘀𝗀𝗏 Greaves are picked up for Artemis, but again, I'm just looking towards 𝘀𝗏𝗏 3-0 on the Kindred. First item already picked up, being the Immortal Shield Bow. And now do we see more rotation from 𝘀𝗏𝗏 to this bottom side? At the moment, 𝘀𝗏𝗏 pathing towards the Drake. Second Drake off the game for the side of 𝘀𝘀cie in 40 seconds time as a Rift Herald dropped by 𝘂𝑒go in the bottom lane. 𝘀𝗏𝗏 on his way down as well.
Going to make sure, again, this is not going to get anything more than the 2 plates that are absolutely necessary to get here. 𝘂𝑒go is kind of struggling to breathe at least a little bit inside of this game right now, just because of how much pressure has been put on by 𝘀𝗏𝗏, which is, it's a big statement for 𝘀𝗏𝗏. This team has kind of fallen a little bit in terms of their ability to play, right? This was supposed to be one of the teams on the first half that was competing with the likes of Cerberus and the likes of 𝐾am for some of the top spots inside of the league, but we've kind of dropped them off that pedestal, and a big part of that has been 𝘀𝗏𝗏 has not been what is effectively the early game MVP or one of the better players like he was in some of the early weeks. This is a performance so far that's giving us at least a little bit of a window back to that time period where all of a sudden 𝘀𝗏𝗏 was being touted as having effectively an MVP type performance already for 𝘀𝘀cie in our first week.
𝘀𝘀cie with priority in the river. 𝘀𝗏𝗏, though, standing on a ward, so 𝘂𝑒go and Yado will not be making their way over. Instead, they're going to be pushing this mid lane and forfeiting over the second Drake of the game to the side of 𝘀𝘀cie. And it is a Chemtech. That means we've got no Chemtech Rift. We've got no Hextech Rift shenanigans. We're going back old school Infernal. That's a lot of damage. And especially when you've got a Caitlyn, a Twisted Fate, a Kindred, a Gwen, that's pretty spicy if 𝘀𝘀cie can get their hands on some of those Drakes.
You think about the range that this composition actually has as a whole. It's kind of insane to think what an Infernal Soul can actually add to it. When you're sieging down towers and things like that, it's important. As top lane, we see aggression onto the Gragas.
You better not run, you better not hide. 𝘁𝗍𝑎𝑠 and 𝘂𝗑𝑑 will be telling you why Yado TPing to the top lane. But Cerberus are going to be able to get out, it's fine. I sing a terrible little lullaby, terrible little Christmas song. H3, Death Sentence comes through, and the Black Shield will be able to keep him nice and cozy and snug in the bottom lane.
I would love if somebody could clip that so I could have it forever in my memory bank. That nice little Christmas jingle attempted by my co-caster right there.
I did pretty well, I think, right?
I mean, if you were 100% script, just like improvising that, I'd say so. But there is 100% no way that was just improvised. That was scripted beyond
I
belief.
swear to
I
God,
can hear you reading the script off of your computer, just trying to pronounce the words that you wrote down.
Look, the only script. Look, there's no script. 𝘀🐶🗰 are beating Cerberus. The scripts are gone, right? The scripts got burnt in the script house a long time ago.
The script that was written on the desk was like it had to be early game aggression. It had to be shutting down Artemis. It had to be all these things, and they're coming to fruition. And again, a lot of it is around 𝘀𝗰𝗶𝗹𝘀 and Blazes.
3-1. I wouldn't call that shutting him down.
I wouldn't call it him taking over on a Jinx quite yet, which is kind of the nice thing. And it's also, what was it, the first 5 minutes or so, he had 3 kills. Since then, he has not had any kills. So to me, that's shutting down Artemis, if we consider that, at least in that regard. The pressure they've gotten on there has...
Quite literally, 𝘀𝗰𝗃 got a shutdown on Artemis. So
yeah,
the point stands.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty nice. The only thing they've really been able to accomplish for Artemis in the last couple of minutes has been that Rift Herald drop. And 𝘀𝗰𝗃 has kind of run the map pretty much everywhere else across the board, continuing to try to put aggression into Pun here as well. As soon as Coded gets this wave underneath, I'm sure that they're going to be going for a dive. They can kick it off with a Kindred if Coded doesn't just lose his entire health bar.
He's taking a lot of damage. The Destiny's going to come and down. 𝘀𝗰𝗃 looking towards the top side. 𝘀🐶🗰, they don't need to play around the bottom lane. They can play around the top lane. It's another kill going their way. And Ego says, you know what? Maybe I'll look towards the top, or pardon me, maybe I'll look towards the bottom side. If you guys are going towards the top, he's going to be able to clear a ward, but that is all. There'll be some plays there going the way of Artemis, but the first tower of the game is secured by 𝘀🐶🗰 in the top lane.
Nice racing. Again, it's 𝘀𝗰𝗃 finding this perfect balance of, okay, we need to find counter plays by counter ganking on the bottom side of the map and finding cross map plays where maybe something can come about. That was a really cursed rocket. They saw the back timer of Coded from a second ago, but nonetheless, Artemis, the fact that even anticipated potentially seeing that rocket being like the jump scare that caused Coded to like dash backwards and attempt to get away from it, that or just misaimed it, one of the two. But nonetheless, it was rather impressive. This was, for me, Coded was either baiting really, really hard or was just like absolutely suffering at the hands of Pun, who he had to be anticipating something. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been playing this aggressively into this champion right here. Probably could have played back a little bit further. But as soon as Blazes pops his ultimate, he knows his fate is completely sealed. I thought they were going to have to stay under tower. But again, because Pun played so aggressively on the front foot, he didn't have the cooldowns to make them force the Kindred ultimate underneath the tower and stall out that play. Maybe the one knock on Pun right there, who was attempting to kind of counteract what was the top side shift. And if he had stalled out the wave a little bit longer, if he had stalled out the play a little bit longer, maybe they could have traded for the bottom tower a bit faster and gotten that first blood for the likes of Artemis. But we're splitting hairs here. Pun's taking a bunch of aggression in response to the bottom side play that came out from the likes of Cerberus as 𝘀🐶🗰 command this 1,000 gold lead, this 2-dragon advantage.
Now 𝘀🐶🗰 looking at towards the Coated. They're going to be able to get a knock up, and the hallowed mist is not going to be able to do enough to keep Coated alive. Ego picks up the kill, and it is 1 kill going the way of Cerberus. No shutdown goal on it, Coated, but Cerberus will be happy to pick up their 4th kill of the game nonetheless. It's now 𝘀🐶🗰 potentially looking towards Artemis in the mid lane.
Where has Cerberus been on the, or my apologies, where's 𝘀🐶🗰 been on the map for the last like 30 seconds or something like that? Did they overstay on bottom? It's possible Vit and H3 were like catching a wave on bottom side and pushing it back. Maybe that's why, because it looks like what happened was 𝘂𝗷 caught a wave in the middle of the map, just around that river area, after what would have been like Vit and H3 had actually caught that. But if they had just backed and walked into mid lane, none of that tower damage comes through, and Blazes catches that entire bottom wave. It looked like he even got caught out a little bit because he had to transition into bot side just to shove that wave out. So maybe a little bit of miss wave management right there from the likes of 𝘀🐶🗰 as their topsider got aggressed against, which we've been missing all game. I'm happy that came about, but Ego's now in some very, very real trouble.
Ego goes golden to avoid the dark binding, but that just means he eats the gold card, he eats the soul shackles, he eats the ignite. H3 picks up the kill. Artemis on the run. A Destiny is being channeled. A good death sentence comes through. Blazes in, potentially to the rescue. Lamb's Respite will buy 𝘀𝗰𝗃 some extra time, but Pun belly slamming his way in to pick up the kill will make it a 1-for-1 with both junglers down. And now we've got a case of the 3rd Drake of the game being up, a teleport being channeled. Pun looking to come in from the back line. Blazes has the gold card. They're turning the fight. 1 OP is just going to get popped. 𝘂𝗷 trying to dish out the damage onto Vit, but he's forced to run out courtesy of the phase rush movement speed. Coated teleporting in to match Pun, and Pun will get popped. It's another kill going the way of 𝘀🐶🗰, and now the Drake is up, and the Drake is being started. Ego on the top side of the map won't be able to contest this for Cerberus.
Walking into this split for the likes of 𝘀𝘀cie, this is what I envision this team looking like the entirety of the split, right? If they were operating on all cylinders. It's a combination of their mid-jungle just attacking consistently for the likes of 𝘀𝗀 in the bottom lane, and this is exactly what you're looking at. 𝘁3 did a really good job forcing out the rest of that. The stun came through. Their team is still lacking a bit of damage because it just isn't quite there on the Caitlyn yet, but when the second, third items start to come through, when the Storm Razor's around, and you start to get some solid damage, things get a lot better. There, 𝘁𝗀 kind of overextends, expecting this fight to go, I think, a little bit longer and having the rest of his team there for backup, which is a little unfortunate. He was able to push 𝘁𝑚𝑖s out to not get anything over the course of this fight, but then they overreach on the side of Cerberus. It's something they don't do very often with a solid teleport flank from the likes of Pun, but they don't capitalize on it fast enough because Pun is waiting for the full retreat, but they just full turn into the rest of the team off the back of the Morgana binding, and Pun, unfortunately, it looks like they spotted him out because 𝘀𝗀 was there for the defensive teleport, combined with the fact that they found him sitting in that brush, all things considered. 𝘀𝘀cie understanding the play that had come about way better than Cerberus did, even though they were the ones that made the aggressive move in the first place.
And 𝘀𝘀cie find themselves with nearly a 2,000 gold lead. 𝘁𝗀 is a monster on the map right now. Rift Herald has been dropped by 𝘀𝘀cie as they look to pick up another tower. They've already picked up the outer tower in the top lane, and now they look for the outer tower in the mid lane. The Lantern will be able to take 𝘁𝑚𝑖s out to safety. One tower down, 𝘀𝘀cie will back off. And for 𝘀𝘀cie, the big fight is in 3.5 minutes' time. That fourth Drake, that potential infernal soul.
And this has been, I think, the game plan, and it looks as though 𝘀𝘀cie have kind of figured out the code, right? Where 𝘀𝘀cie, they haven't really been the biggest of teams to actually go for the dragon, but we heard about it. We heard about some of the struggle they've had adapting to the preseason, but this seems to be the play, right? They get a bot lane that's capable of contesting, especially against 𝘁𝑚𝑖s, but something that has some pushing power and some catch potential with the Morgana is just humongous. And when you have a powerful mid-jungle duo to pair with it, the bottom side is your plaything. That's pretty much what happened through the entirety of the early game, as like you said. Now, we're only a few minutes out, 3 minutes now that 𝘀𝘀cie is from taking that Infernal Soul, where all of a sudden this siege composition, this pick comp is just going to be so nasty to deal with.
Ego taking so much damage. Wildcard is almost enough to pick up the kill, but Ego will be able to survive. He is going to be forced to back. I was wondering whether 𝘀𝘀cie might take this as an opportunity to try to start up on the Baron Nashor, but they won't do that. Instead, they're just going to send blazes towards the top lane, just push the waves. And as we mentioned, 𝘀𝘀cie don't need to do anything crazy just now. They just need to keep control of the map, not throw any kills, and then make sure that they get river priority in a couple of minutes' time for the soul.
Importantly, I think this 𝘀𝘀cie squad, they have a lot of pick tools, but they don't have the damage to really generate a pick composition unless they've got 3+ members in any given instance. Pun actually right there getting caught out in a rough position. Blazes went to top lane and got caught out by Ego and 𝘂𝑇to. 𝘂𝑇o was already handling that wave. It looks like Ego came back after the aggression had come through, and that was what cost the top laner right there, as Blazes got stuck in another position where, again, he's trying to go to top wave. There isn't really a place for him to be across the map, trying to respond to where 𝘂𝑇o is through kind of unexplored territory, getting himself caught out. And this almost certainly leads to just like this outnumber, this taking of the mid tower, and all of a sudden a little bit of push power, a little bit of momentum back into the favor of Cerberus after such an incredible setup to the game coming out from 𝘀𝘀cie, where again, we're now 1.5 minutes out. The mid pushed helps kind of equalize what had happened. That mid tower would make it so easy for 𝘀𝘀cie to just shove out from that point specifically, but now that wave has the ability to be shoved in much further against the lies of 𝘀𝘀cie. Is Blazes, he just steps up too far. It was the Rise ultimate behind him alongside Ego catching him as he tries to escape into the river.
Now with that outer tower down in the mid lane as well, it means that 𝘀𝘀cie have a little bit less to work with for that Drake. It gives Cerberus a few more ways in, but with just over a minute towards the Infernal, this is the back that both teams will have to start doing. A final chance to pick up items before that critical Infernal fight. Blaze is already picking up the blue buff. The 𝘁𝗏𝗏 is going to be timing out as well, and it's just going to be a case of warding now in the river.
Funny enough, I'm seeing double collector here from the likes of 𝘁𝗏 and 𝘁𝗀, which is, it's hysterical to me, mostly because again they're kind of lacking damage in general. But when they've got a pick composition like this, and you're able to generate what is a single target CC and single target damage effectively, how many times have you seen a member like 𝘁𝑚𝑖s running away, 𝘂𝑇o running away, somebody running away, Ego running away on a sliver of health that would have made all the difference if one last auto attack was able to execute from a certain percentage health threshold, and that's the intention. It's also really good into what is Kindred ultimate, because everybody gets dropped a very significant amount of their health, and cleaning it up afterwards easy enough.
Now Pun getting run down. That's going to be a Destiny coming through, acing the whole tank by Ego, but Pun's going to go gold and he's going to die when he comes out. 1 member down for Cerberus. Ego still alive. 𝘀𝗀cie with 5. Infernal Drake arriving onto the rift. It's on Ego. Can he find a way? Well, 𝘀𝗀cie, they're not even going to go in the pit. They're just going to take down 𝘁𝗀. They look for more. Let's go. Giving out stitches. Here's a coated, and Artemis forced to cleanse away the gold card. They're going to Realm Warp. I think they're going to try to sneak this Baron, but I don't know if they've got the damage for it, Rebel.
Talk about the Baron setup that actually, or my apologies, the Dragon setup that had come through from the likes of 𝘀𝗀cie. Ego's just he just got executed. I don't know what they're doing right here. I don't know what they think that they're doing. I know you have a Jinx who's powerful and a Ryze with consistent damage, but you don't have someone to tank right there. That is just a mishap. And this is a rare game of mistakes from the likes of Cerberus. 𝘀𝗀cie is actually playing incredibly clean League of Legends for the most part. There've been a handful of situations where we've seen like the bottom lane fight, Blaze is getting caught out a couple of times. But outside of that, again, they're just like set up for what is the Dragon play on the bottom side. Their early control of the game planning in general is looking so good from 𝘀𝗀cie right here. And you can see the bottom side river was set up perfectly to be able to kind of capture when Cerberus decided to step in. And it was Pun and Ego who stepped in, attempting to challenge the back of the pit with the rest of their team in mid lane that cost everything. And now, forcing out a TP, there isn't everybody here. There's still a member. Ego still has to join the Baron before anything else happens.
There's no one to smite away the Baron, and the Baron is secured by the side of 𝘀𝗀cie. H3 will go gold, and that stops Artemis from being able to find a kill, being able to get excited as a Lamb's Respite is dropped down. 𝘁𝗀 fairly low as Ego going to be joining into the fray. The Zap comes through. Artemis was wondering if he was going to drop the ult, but that had already been dropped down. Pun could look to go over the wall, drops down a barrel roll, not going to be able to find anyone. Everyone from 𝘀𝗀cie survives. And 𝘀𝗀cie have Infernal Soul. They've got 4 Drakes to Cerberus's none. They've got the Baron buff as well. Cerberus are struggling.
And it is now at this point where, again, 𝘀𝗀cie is going to start really stepping into their own in terms of this composition, because the damage is starting to get there from Vic. 𝘁𝗀 has already been a beast and is only going to become more of a beast. They continue these pickoffs.
Ace in the hole combined with the Destiny. Ego is just instantly locked down, but has the Lantern from 𝘁𝗀 to take him out to safety. And that was a fair amount of resources used by 𝘀𝗀cie and not getting much in return.
They are going to force out Ego from the remainder of the play, and that's going to help them force down bottom tower, or mid tower, my apologies. And it does set up also a bot shift, where all of a sudden, H3 is free to set up this bottom side river to continue the push on mid lane with the Caitlyn, or they could shift it into bottom side and be able to take what is the bottom outer or inner tower alongside sieging up the inhibitor on the bottom side. As it's, again, 𝘀𝗀cie who just seem to have a crystal clear idea of how this game is needing to be played at 100% of the time. Pun is way out of position here. He is almost certainly going to die as soon as this wave comes in, because there are 4 members from 𝘀𝗀cie here just waiting. Thankfully, they pull off the gas. They say, okay, we're not going to dive the tower. That is the wrong call. They need to be on him right now.
Yeah, and look at coated in the top side. He might be getting caught out as well. Pun will be able to use a belly slam to take him out to safety. And here is what we were talking about in the top lane. Ego and Yado onto coated. Coated forced to burn the ultimate to keep himself safe, but he's just buying 2 members of Cerberus's time as 𝘀𝗀cie just look towards sieging in this bottom lane. Look towards cracking open the base of Cerberus for the first time. And Vit and 𝘁𝗀 have so much damage. Artemis has to be insanely careful when trying to poke down the members of 𝘀𝗀cie.
It is a matter of, again, this Infernal Soul makes it so easy to siege because you've already got this massive range advantage for the likes of 𝘀𝗀cie between the Caitlyn Morgana, and you throw a rapid fire cannon into the mix. Coded also is just ungankable on the likes of this Gwen. There are a couple of champions that filled this niche, but it appears as though Coded is just comfortable mostly on this. And even the catch potential afterwards in an attempt to snag it was covered by 𝘁𝗀. Again, it just seems like 𝘀𝗀cie has just written every single line of the script for the likes of this game, and they understand where they've needed to be pretty much the entire time. This composition now with the Infernal Soul, also the one problem they've been having is just closing out kills, getting that last little bit of damage. You see how defensively that Blazes has built over the course of this game, even with the Immortal Shield Bow and the likes of 𝘁𝗀 instead of additional damage, but it just doesn't matter at this point, because now all of a sudden when you hit them with these long range abilities underneath the towers and such, you're going to be chunking them for health pretty much no matter what. There's not that much defense on the side of Cerberus. Their one saving grace, of course, Artemis sitting on 3.5 items, looks like the most in the game, or close to the most in the game, right around where Blazes is at as well. That might be the one tool they can use if they could get enough in their way, but the problem is Pun is not particularly strong right now, Ego is not particularly strong right now, and it is a Mikael's Thresh because they are that terrified of the CC that can come out from the likes of 𝘀𝗀cie when it comes to this counter siege when they're defending underneath of their towers. And it puts them in such an awkward position that nobody can really find a proper engage. No one can frontline against this 𝘀𝗀cie squad who just has all of this damage to work with now.
Well, I just want to quickly counter that point about the 𝘁𝗀𝗀s. I feel like it's not just because, 𝘁𝗀𝗃 has so much CC, it's because they've got two incredibly impactful forms of CC. That gold card from Blazes, that Dark Binding from H3. Aside from that, all that's really there are the traps from Vit, which don't really matter. And Artemis has a cleanse. You add on a 𝘁𝗀𝗀s. One is for the Dark Binding, one is for the gold card. All of a sudden, 𝘁𝗀𝗃 have no more pick potential onto Artemis.
Oh.
But they do have pick potential. On to Pan Destiny into the lane. You can drop down the Everfrost, but it ain't gonna do much. That's another kill going the way of 𝘀𝗀𝗧. Elder in 1 minute time, Rebel. And 𝘀𝗀𝗧 have not been able to get control over anything on the map. Sure, they were able to get 1 Rift Herald, but that is
I like
all
this.
that they have been given by 𝘀𝗀𝗃.
Look at the timing of the waves. They've got mid lane timed up perfectly with bottom side if it is Coded who decides to stick with that. And as that's happening, they're shifting into the top side jungle to take a bunch of control for the Baron buff that's coming through. It's gorgeous play. Once again, 𝘀𝗀𝗃 understanding top to bottom how to play this team. This is, I think, the first and only time over the course of the split that we have seen 𝘀𝗀𝗧 looked like just like they're completely out of the game, right? Like this isn't a 𝘀𝗀𝗧 that's fighting back. This isn't a 𝘀𝗀𝗧 that's finding a bunch of kills. This isn't a 𝘀𝗀𝗧 that's finding fights at all. This is 𝘀𝗀𝗃 running the table pretty much top to bottom. If it weren't for the 3 kills at the beginning of the game that went over because of some coin flipping from the likes of Vit and H3, this would be 4 times the number of kills from the side of 𝘀𝗀𝗃 in 29 minutes. This isn't the slugfest we're typically accustomed to. This is precise kind of surgery coming out from the likes of 𝘀𝗀𝗃.
You want to know something about 𝘀𝗀𝗃? Their win rate went ahead at 15 minutes, 92%. It's actually even higher than 𝘀𝗀𝗧 when they are ahead. When 𝘀𝗀𝗃 can generate an early lead, they can perform fantastically well. And that's the situation that 𝘀𝗀𝗃 have found themselves in. Death Sentence will come through, but so much damage so quickly. Run up here already taken down. Ego's going to be able to steal a soul. It's a 1-for-1 so far. Zappa comes through. A lot of damage onto 𝘁𝗀𝗃. Drops down the lambs, a respite to buy some time. But Pun's surely going to get taken down instantly. Goes golden to buy more time. H3 will get zapped. H3 will get taken down. It's a 3v3. Artemis still on full HP. Out comes the Mega Death Rocket. 𝘁𝗀𝗃 taking a lot of damage. Going to be able to sidestep the zap. Artemis over the wall. Still looking for the damage. It's a 3v2 now. Another zap is a drop of it taken down low. 𝘁𝗀𝗃 going to smile to the Elder to get some time. And Artemis is down. And 𝘀𝗀𝗃 will be able to find the fight. Vit is burning. Vit's going to be able to heal off the Elder. 𝘀𝗀𝗃 win the fight 5-4-2. They get the Elder Drake as well. And 𝘀𝗀𝗃 reclaim the driving seat of the game.
Despite the fact that Coded went down really early, got enough work done so that 𝘁𝗀𝗃 could kind of follow up with enough kills and enough damage into the side of 𝘀𝗀𝗧. They played that fight about as perfectly as you would expect. 𝘀𝗀𝗧 is one of our better team fighting teams, and it went on display right there, being down, what was it, 6,000 gold and an entire Infernal Drake, nearly completing what was the effective sweep of the side of 𝘀𝗀𝗃, with Artemis not being touched until the very end of the fight, but it just didn't matter. 𝘁𝗀𝗃 was still up, Blazes was still up, and Vit was still up. Their damage was still there, and able to make the impact that they needed it to. All they needed was a bit of health on 𝘁𝗀𝗃 to be able to turn and literally 2-shot Artemis on the likes of this Kindred. Incredible stuff from 𝘀𝗀𝗃. Now out team fighting our best team fighting team. They did have a massive advantage for it, and you'll get to see this again. Coded kind of went a little sicko mode right here over top of this wall, throwing an ultimate into 5 members. I think just looking for this angle, making sure that he would have enough damage being put out at a perfect time is what ends up happening here. And I'm a little curious where Blazes ends up during this fight, because I know H3 on the top side kind of closes things off with an ultimate, which is what forces Artemis back a little bit. You love this move from Coded, getting off as much AoE as possible, finding the pick on a 𝘁𝗀𝗃 as quick as possible as well. And you can see 𝘁𝗀𝗃 kind of sets up this little angle to work with, where Ego's below him, has to do that for enough health, and H3 is able to kind of prevent Yado and Artemis from throwing damage into the massive damage dealers that are on the side of 𝘀𝗀𝗃. I didn't even notice that Yado just jumped in and immediately had 𝘂𝗍nias during the course of this fight, got trapped up and died. And you can see 𝘁𝗀𝗃, watch this, presses auto, presses smite, turns immediately 2 shots Artemis just off the back of that collector. Insane stuff in terms of damage, as 𝘀𝗀𝗃 almost certainly just going to walk this one in for a victory.
If you thought it was difficult for 𝘀𝗀𝗧 before when they were behind, now they are 12,000 gold behind. They're fighting against an Infernal Soul 𝘀𝗀𝗃, an Elder Drake 𝘀𝗀𝗃, a Baron empowered 𝘀𝗀𝗃. And 𝘀𝗀𝗧 were almost able to come out even on the previous fight, but they still lost. They've still lost so much on the map, and now it's getting a little bit more difficult. 𝘀𝗀𝗧 somehow need to be able to survive the onslaught for another minute, need to wait for this Elder to time out, but they're not going to get the chance. Ace in the hole comes through. Ego not going to be popped. He's going to be able to take the Lantern out to safety, but 4 members of 𝘀𝗀𝗃 still pushing forward. As the 5th of Coated pushing in the top lane, looking to be able to get some more structures out of the 𝘀𝗀𝗧 base.
Absolutely incredible. Both inhibitors burnt down. Nice play from 𝘀cie to be able to add additional member kind of minions to the likes of this push. Now, you had a little bit of low health, but that's just not going to be the case. Pun dumps the ultimate. It's not going to matter at all here, as 𝘀cie just looking to clean up the final tower. This is the last fight, but it's not going to go well.
The Elder buff is a downer, so is the final Nexus tower. The members of Cerberus are falling. This is not the luxury of week 3. This is the luxury of week 1. This is the luxury that wants to take the VCS winter title, and they take down Cerberus in game 1. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a series on our hands.
Goodness gracious. To say that 𝘀cie, when they came out in the week number 2, I believe it was, when they actually first took on Cerberus, and we said, okay, maybe this team can have some fighting spirit. And then they got wiped in a 2-0 against the likes of Cerberus. We were like, okay, that makes sense. And then they went on to only lose against one other team over the course of everything. It was 𝘀𝗀 who ended up taking that series against them eventually after they beat them in week number 1. And things were like, okay, we're slotting them in as the number 3 team. And now all of a sudden they come out of nowhere in the woodwork. We were worried about their ability to adapt because they started to look like they had struggles in the previous week against some of the lower ranked teams, and out of nowhere they put up an absolute slam dunk against the likes of Cerberus here in the first game of this best of 3. We have plenty of time for Cerberus to come back, but after 2 straight weeks now where I've seen Cerberus's mid jungle start to falter to some extent, they have to figure out a way to kind of patch that up immediately. Ego and Yado are a huge reason why they've been able to have this massive success over the splits, and that was the biggest part of why they ended up losing this series or the game.
A fantastic performance from 𝘀cie𝗰𝗶𝗹𝗀, especially on the side of 𝘀cie. As you can see, the hype train for 𝘀cie is back. We're going to be jumping on into a break, so I hope that all of you guys will be jumping on board the train, and we'll be hearing from 𝘀cie and Tim to get their thoughts on the game in just a short bit. Stay tuned here at the VCS English. Today was meant to be Cerberus smashing 𝘀cie and cementing their spot as top of the group, top of the league, so that when they play against 𝘀𝗀, even if they lose, they still had the top seed. But 𝘀cie, Tim, that first game was anything but that. A fantastic performance from 𝘀cie, all starting from the early game, all starting from the drafting phase, really. And 𝘀cie looked phenomenal today.
For sure, and usually I would doubt 𝘀cie𝗰𝗄 more or less, but this time he had a really great game, and Ego much less so. I mean, maybe it's just UO's fault because he tweeted that he might be the best player of the VCS Winter Split. It was like the one vote that 𝘁𝑦_𝗀𝗃 had going up. And yeah, Ego had a really rough game, 𝘀cie𝗰𝗄 a very good game. It was a huge jungle diff, in my opinion. But also, like, aside from that bot lane skirmish, as 𝘀𝗀 mentioned earlier, there was not really much going well for Cerberus. Gotta say so, while losing, Cerberus still managed to hold on for a long time. In that one Elder fight, they had a small chance, but overall, just gonna give credit to 𝘀cie. They look like they're somewhat back at least.
And Tim, to go to you, the positives for the side of Cerberus, as 𝘀cie mentioned, they were able to hold on for a while in the game, but it felt, at least to me in the cast, that 𝘀cie just had full control over everything. They decided the tempo of the game, and it was Cerberus just playing along to the strings of 𝘀cie.
Yeah, I think the good point for Cerberus is that I think especially the Elder fight showed that even at a 6k gold disadvantage, they can still out teamfight. I think they played that teamfight better, and they still lost, but it was really close, much closer than it should have been. I think if 𝘀cie, especially 𝘀cie_Queen, doesn't get this early lead, which is, I mean, okay, so you get invaded once. It doesn't happen twice, right? I'm just hoping. So I think that can be a big difference maker. If they don't give this big lead to 𝘀cie_Queen again, I think they have a pretty easy time taking over the game, because the bot lane with Artemis and RunOP look great. I mean, they smashed bot lane. Yes, they got killed once, level 1, where they gave up first blood, but the wave was actually in their favor, so it was pushing towards them, so it was better for them in the end. And I think overall they just looked much better. So I think I would give second game still to Cerberus if you would ask me.
Now, 𝘀cie coming into draft for game 1, talking about these two teams matching against each other and talking about Cerberus, I said you don't beat Cerberus, you beat Artemis. And I think that game kind of proved me wrong in that sense, because Artemis was fine. He was 3-1 on the Jinx, and I think that feels to me the first time really we've seen this split, a team being able to generate leads on other sides of the map and then being able to convert that into a win when 𝘁𝗻𝘀 is still performing well on his champion. In this case, it was the 𝘁𝗀. So for Cerberus, do they look to try to snowball more around 𝘁𝗻𝘀 because we didn't really see Ego looking towards the bottom side, or do you think it's a case of Cerberus saying 𝘁𝗻𝘀 is fine, we're looking towards the top side of the map, towards the mid lane, try to get those lanes ahead?
I actually think it's more like the latter, but not just trying to get them ahead, but more like getting them to stabilize more, because Pan was looking rough in the laning phase. I mean, he was playing Gragas into Gwen, which is at least fine matchup, I would say, and he was just falling down in CS very, very early on, despite Gwen not being like the best early game champion, and it was like an easy win con to just get some leads towards the Gwen there. And bot lane, I mean, they are like fine on their own. I mean, with no jungle interaction, they just win, and considering the draft, I mean, they also got 𝘁𝗀, which is like the ideal pickup. They probably won't change it unless they have to. And I think with Ego, I expect his focus to be like more on the top side. Being mid lane was fine, but top much less so. So maybe just have like a bit more of a shadowing towards the top side to just guarantee that Pan is in a fine spot, and maybe like also look towards the draft. Maybe the Gragas pick was not working out too well for him. Get him on something that can like actually neutralize the enemy carry top laner if they happen to pick one.
And Tim, I want to go back to this jungle matchup, Ego against 𝘁𝗰𝗄, because as you said, sometimes you have these games where someone like 𝘁𝗁𝗃 will be able to invade onto Ego, get a big goalie, but what's the chances of that happening 2 times? What are the chances of it happening a second time? Do you think 𝘁𝗁𝗃 can pull off a performance like that again as we head into draft?
I think it's going to be harder. I think there had to be a lot going wrong and a lot of priors for them to actually execute on that. And I think it will be much harder this game, especially since now they're prepared for it. And the question is going to be, what is going to be 𝘀𝗀𝗻's first pick?
I think one of the biggest things as well to bring up here, 𝘀𝗀𝗃, is the side of Cerberus banning away that Twisted Fate. The amount of roaming potential Blazes had was incredible. But now with that LeBlanc picked up, a chance to snowball in the mid lane for 𝘀𝗀𝗃 and still take those leads to the side lanes.
For sure, but they are picking the LeBlanc very early. They might just counter pick it on the side of Cerberus. Maybe they go for the Vex or go for the Lissandra or something similar like that. But they also like to pick early for their bot lane, because their bot lane is undoubtedly their strongest part of the map, I would say, because 𝘁𝗻𝘀 and 1OP. I mean, only their off games were like this one game against Team Secret, if I remember, and this SPTC series. And even in their off games, they still look decent. So it's definitely rightfully so that they early pick the Caitlyn for the side of 𝘁𝗻𝘀. And yeah, as I mentioned, you can counterpick the LeBlanc with the Lissandra, and that's what they are going for.
And Tim, this Lissandra seemed to be the staple of the VCS in terms of counterpicking a LeBlanc. Cerberus have got everything that they've wanted out of these first 2 picks. A strong ADC for 𝘁𝗻𝘀 and a counterpick in the mid lane.
Yep, and it seems like the answer is going to be the 𝘁𝗀. So they're just, I mean, honestly, the 𝘁𝗀 is probably one of the best picks into Caitlyn, because you can match the range, especially later on in laning phase. You have decent push with your rocket launcher as well. So I think 𝘁𝗀 is probably one of the better AD carries you can find into that bot lane matchup. I would have really loved to see maybe even Morgana pick instead of the Lissandra, because I mean, if Yado can actually play it, Morgana is really good into LeBlanc, so you could have flex picked that pick for support in mid lane. Just some crazy things, and that's an any hover.
He should pick
This
Fresh
would
and
be,
Bender Morgana, or the other way around.
No. It's
Oh,
gonna
no.
be VCS Alistar, no, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, but he shouldn't.
Vietnamese cow series, ladies and gentlemen. We have an Alistar back in the mix.
And 𝘀𝗀𝗃, I want to go to you, because I'm a bit disappointed here from Cerberus, because one of the most fun matchups I've been seeing from Cerberus, as well as some other teams here in the VCS, is the Caitlyn 𝘀𝗀𝗃 duo. It's able to generate such a huge lead on its own. So I'm a little disappointed that we haven't seen, such a dominant lane duo coming out from the Cerberus bottom side.
So am I, but I actually think, and I might just trigger Tim with that, I think the Alistar is actually okay depending on the support bands you're putting there, because Caitlyn Alistar is also a lane that can work very well. Starting from level 2, you're really putting a lot of pressure onto the 𝘁𝗀, and if you ban like the safe support options for the 𝘁𝗀 to have like some net of peel for the 𝘁𝗀 to have like some sort of safety net, with the Fresh banning out, with the Lantern being away from her, you can actually put Vid in a very rough spot then. That's likely what they are going for with 𝘁𝗻𝘀 here. They still have the Morgana, which is maybe like what they are likely going for now, because they still have like the Black Shield going on for them. But it's not easy to play against Caitlyn Alistar by 𝘁𝗻𝘀 and 1OP, and I'm not really envying the position Vid is right now. Just gotta wait and see what their solo lane pick will be. I mean, they still have to
Nocturne,
pick the top lane.
Nocturne, no Nocturne. It's Nocturne game.
Yeah, Nocturne is open,
It's
and we still have
Bo3.
𝘀𝗰𝗋𝗃 not nerfed.
Pain.
It is locked in. Okay, 𝘁𝗋𝗃 can do some stuff early. Sure, it's not a Nocturne. Sure, he can't fly across the map, but it's still a cool pick. Maybe? No?
I mean, it's pretty nice, but I really like the answer of Braum. One, it works pretty well into 𝘀𝗀𝗏. It doesn't have a great laning phase against Caitlyn because it does get outranged really hard, and it's hard for Braum to reach the Caitlyn ever. But against 𝘁𝗃s as well, it's so easy to just peel off the 𝘁𝗃s and make sure your AD carry stays safe. So all around, I like that pick. And Camille is also going to be picked up. And we could see Jack's counterpick here, and it does seem like we have a Jack's counterpick. And this is, especially early on, very much 50-50 matchup, which usually can be won by the better top laner. But the longer the game goes, it should be going towards Jax.
And one thing that I do want to bring up, 𝘀𝗰𝗃, is this top lane matchup, because we saw in game one 𝘁𝗃 just having the time of his life with the Gwen into 𝘁's Gragas. Now we've got this Camille Jax matchup, which is more of a case of skill expression in the top lane, and I'm very excited to see how this goes, because if either the Camille or the Jax can get ahead, they can have such an influence in the game, whether that be being in team fights, finding a way through frontline or backline, or just split pushing in the side lanes.
For sure, and it might just be the TP Ignite Camille coming out for 𝘁𝗃, and 𝘁𝗃 in general had like the upper hand against 𝘁, and I'm a little bit voted for 𝘁, because even if Killer Queen maybe puts a little visit up top lane, 𝘁 just might not be allowed to play League of Legends this game, and this could be a very rough spot for the Jax until he hits like 1 or 2 items, and by that time it might just be too late for the side of Cerberus. Gotta say though, I still believe in the individual skill and think Cerberus will take it to a series.
Okay, Tim, are you on the luxury hype train, or are you having faith in the fact that Cerberus are still undefeated?
I think that luxury probably has the more meta, more solid comp. But I also believe that Cerberus can, in this game, get ahead. I think Killer Queen on Viego has much less early game agency, especially in the 1v1 aggression. So I don't think he can recreate something like last game, which I would have seen them maybe try to go for again. Also, what I want to see from both teams is play 3-2. Just put both of your side lanes in the same lane. Just let Camille and Jax push, and put Lissandra and LeBlanc covering behind them, and that's how I want to see them play the game.
Okay. Well, 𝘀𝗀𝗃, Tim, thank you very much for your thoughts. We're going to be jumping on into game and bringing back in Rebel Fox. Rebel, what's your thoughts on the draft, actually? Because we've heard 𝘀𝗀𝗃 and Tim's thoughts. Where do you stand?
I find it a little bit curious that we decided to switch roles completely in terms of jungle, where game one, I feel like Luxury's whole advantage came off the back of finding Killer Queen early advantages and shutting down Ego, making sure that the map wasn't going to fall to pieces. And in this game, the exact opposite is true, where now Killer Queen is on the Viego, he's on the farming champion, and Ego's decided to take up the mantle of a champion that can attack him, especially if you have things like the Lissandra for lane push, if you've got the Caitlyn in the bottom lane that potentially could get lane push as well relatively easily to support this kind of invade style. I will say I did have my idea of what champion will work better than a 𝘁𝗃, but I get why the 𝘁𝗃s ended up getting taken.
Okay, well, we'll see whether this series, whether this game will be a case of early aggressive junglers being the narrative, being the win condition for either side. We are seeing both junglers starting on the top side of the map, just like they did in game one. So maybe we'll see that aggression towards the bottom side, towards Artemis and Vit once again.
It feels like, again, if Ego can actually generate one-to-one interactions against the likes of Killer Queen, that would be ideal here. That's kind of the intention with this, which is it's one of the very few champions I think that in the earlier game, especially with like Viego's Q and things, that can outburst him and put legitimate kill pressure onto him if ran into inside of the jungle. Again, I have better ideas for champions that would do this, but unfortunately, I think Ego he's not a jungler to play what I like to think. So we're not going to worry about that. And the skill matchup in the top side is another one I want to track at least a little bit, because 𝘁𝗃 is a notorious Jax player from back in the day, and now he gets to play up against it as the Camille. So you'd think if anybody understands how this champion is supposed to tick and what the Camille can actually operate into it, that unfortunately would be Mr. 𝘁𝗃. So 𝘁's got some work put out for him in this earlier stage of the game.
Well, as we say, that is a 𝘁 who's got a very nice CS lead, although there is a wave slowly pushing towards 𝘁𝗃, which will even up that CS between the two top laners shortly. As both junglers just doing, I wanted to say a full clear on the top side and then down to bot, but 𝘀𝗀 actually did a very weird path because he started on the Raptors, he then went up to red, and I thought he was going to go to 𝘀𝗀, but instead he then pathed all the way back down towards the bottom side of the map.
It's interesting because it opens up this rather large timer between the Raptor take and then the 𝘀𝗀 take, because what's going to happen eventually is that the 𝘀𝗀s are going to get taken on second clear as the Raptors respawn, but it opens up this timer because of the red take that had come about that maybe allows for some sort of gank timing between there to cover for top or for mid lane, which is the intention behind something like this. 𝘀𝗀 is also going to find 𝘀𝗀 in the river, but too little too late because the 𝘁𝗀𝗏 has already been taken, and 𝑉𝑖T and 𝘁3 were already prepared for a situation like this. So everything working out just to make sure that the 𝘁𝗀 is well defended in the earlier phase of the game. 𝘀𝗀 can bounce into the mid lane. I was a little curious there for 𝘁�blaze, just making sure he wasn't going to get bullied off too heavily right there, but thankfully his TP gets him into an okay place.
𝘀𝗀 getting a nice trade on to 𝘁. Adaptive defensive mean that 𝘁 can't really afford to try to trade because he's not going to be able to find any damage, and 𝘀𝗀 would be able to come out on top, and we're seeing 𝘀𝗀 starting to path towards the top side as well.
Now, if 𝘀𝗀 has a wave shoving here, this could be a problem just because 𝘀𝗀 is in a bad place to try to respond to the 𝘂𝗏 gank, but the problem is 𝘁𝗀 already has this back timer, and they should know that based on the CS they saw when they saw him in the river, and so now 𝘀𝗀 is taking this 𝘀𝗀 camp, and I wonder if he's going to go back for a full clear, because if he goes back for a full clear, he's going to be down horribly to the likes of 𝘁𝗀's 𝘁𝗀 in the earlier portion of this game. This would have been the moment to strike, is to try to attack this during this wave before 𝘁𝗀 gets to deploy to cover the likes of the 𝘁𝗏, especially if 𝘂𝗀 decides to TP back into lane against the likes of the Jax, because now 𝘁𝗀 all of a sudden can show up, and if 𝘀𝗀 decides to show up as well, he's going to be down items. It's just not going to be a 𝘂𝗏 that's going to be able to have the same kind of effect that what this 𝘁𝗀 is going to have, and so it just frees up this top lane matchup, which is supposed to be a bit of a counter pick for the likes of the Jax, where 𝘀𝗀 now controls a fair amount of the early lane.
Well, 𝘀𝗀 had 700 gold, he picked up the Sheen and teleports back into the top lane. Now Drake is up, and we saw 𝘀𝗀ry being able to have full command of the Drake pit over the entirety of Game 1, picking up all 4 Drakes and the Elder as well. But right now, here in Game 2, 𝘀𝗀ry looking more towards this top side of the map, but 𝘁 low and 𝘀𝗀 has a wave slowly pushing into this tower. They could look for the dive.
Interesting. This also has to work out, right? We're waiting to see. I want to jump to top side. They got to make this work if at all possible.
Counter-Strike is going to be able to find the CC. 𝘁 will leap his way out to safety, but he's still got that teleport available. So he's going to be able to back and teleport his way in. And sure, 𝘀𝗀 has been able to pull out an 8 CS lead, but that's not a huge amount.
This was a massive kind of tempo advantage they had for a moment as 𝘁𝗀 over top of 𝘂𝗀, because 𝘂𝗀 needed to get that Iron Spike whip. Wait to mid lane for a little bit more.
Oh, ethereal chains will connect. 𝘁𝗀 will self-cast the ultimate to keep himself alive. And 𝘁𝗀 ganks top, then ganks into the mid lane, and all he's able to do is burn 𝘂𝗀's ultimate. And now 𝘁 just trading onto 𝘀𝗀, neither top lane a level 6 just yet.
And again, this all comes off the back of the fact that 𝘂𝗀 had this timer for Iron Spike Whip on 32 CS, which is a breakpoint I'm curious if 𝘁𝗀 actually knew, because he tries to jump that route. He tries to jump that over top of 𝘂𝗀 and say, I'm going to attack your top lane. If he gets a successful gank onto 𝘁 where he burns, flash, whatever it might be, or even gets a kill, that is a huge advantage, because they knew that that timer was going to not be able to be matched by the likes of 𝘂𝗀, and then immediately bounces to mid lane, but the protection is there, and they don't know where the 𝘂𝗏 is going to show up, so they can't actually full engage to what was almost underneath of a tower because of 𝘂𝗀's ultimate, and that buys all this time on the bottom side for 𝘂𝗀 now to get a slight advantage in terms of farm, but more importantly, to control the first dragon of the game. This is gorgeous. Cerberus, they don't, and they end up bending a little bit, but not breaking whatsoever to the pressure put on by the early pressure, or the early kind of jungle pathing from the likes of 𝘁𝗀 attempting to jump what was 𝘂𝗀's aggressive play for this Iron Spike Whip, ends up getting completely counteracted.
Well, 𝘁 and 𝘁3 will see the 𝘁𝗀s being essentially taken by 𝘂𝗀, or the 𝘁𝗀s low as 𝘂𝗀 hops over the wall. So they'll be aware, or 𝘁𝗀ry will be aware of exactly where 𝘂𝗀 is on the map, although 𝘂𝗀 hasn't now reset and will be making his way towards his red buff and his Raptors, and then path all the way back down to bot. Maybe we'll see a gank at some point. 𝘁𝗏 and Artemis not level 6 yet, so you can't really afford to drop down the tower dive. Once the 𝘁𝗁 has level 6, all of a sudden it opens up so much potential in terms of tower diving.
It does. It's still a fear into the likes of the Braum, only because, again, if you have that trap line to be able to use on the Jinx, combined with the concussive blows, the Alistar, even with the ultimate, even with the Aftershock, is under real threat of just getting auto-attacked to death because there's no infringement into that territory from Artemis through the trap line, because all of a sudden, Ron OP gets stunned up by the concussive blows. If Artemis steps too far forward, ends up kind of getting caught up on the traps or into a bad situation, all of a sudden, H3 throws the ultimate, H3 throws the concussive blows, Jinx runs right past the likes of the Alistar, and all of a sudden your Caitlyn's dead and there's nothing for you to do because Aftershock and Ultimate are already down.
Okay, lockdown is Blazes, and he's just going to get trampled on. Flash forward, first blood goes the way of Ego. Now the Rift Herald has been started, but 𝘀𝗀cie are just 3 members in a 2-4 as Pun looking to join into the fray as well. Tactical sweep comes through. Vit will make it a 4v4. They're able to land the concussive blows. 𝘀𝗀, how does that Super Mega Death Rocket not hit anyone? I don't quite know, but one is down. Pun is going to fall as well. 𝘀𝗀cie will get 2 kills for 1 in the extended fight, and now can turn their attention back towards the Rift Herald. All the while, though, Rebel, Artemis is just free pushing in the bottom lane, getting these tower plays that he so often does as a Caitlyn.
Now that is why I was trying to figure out how in the world that 𝘀𝗀cie just turned that fight completely on its head. I was like, there is no way that Cerberus was able to actually lose that fight when they have everybody there. It's because Artemis stays on bot side to punish what was the play, being able to equalize plates and take off as many as possible to get the gold back in return. And due to the fact that Blazes was off the map, it ended up being a 4-on-4. But when the Jinx shows up, the AoE is there. This is Blazes who jumps out of the bush trying to catch 𝘀𝗀, but Ron OP is in the perfect position. And this was looking rough because all of a sudden your LeBlanc is gone, mid lane is pushed, so you're losing a fair amount of farm, and you get collapsed on by 4 members when you have only 4 yourself, especially with the early game, or 3 yourself, my apologies, because Jinx wasn't quite there yet. This was where I started to hear the music, and I started to hear the cloud music, because I was like, oh, they've all stacked up in one small area for a Jinx to drop rockets into. I can't imagine the untold damage if that super mega death rocket lands, and all of a sudden Vit gets like 2 kills immediately and gets to run down the others, and all of a sudden you get a 4-kill Jinx at this point in the game alongside the Rift Herald. That would have been disastrous, all things said and done. But Artemis thankfully able to respond with a couple of plates, looks like 3 on the bottom side, so once again getting that gold advantage versus the Rift Herald. But the play there really successful for the likes of 𝘀𝗀cie because they were able to get the Jinx into a very good place.
And I want to touch on this playstyle from Artemis or from Cerberus, depending on how you want to view it, because we've seen it time and time again. Cerberus looking for these skirmishes, looking for these fights on parts of the map, but Artemis, especially when he's on the Caitlyn, he's just sitting in a side lane, he's just picking up tower plates, and I don't know if should Cerberus be looking for these fights when Artemis is on a side lane, or is it a tactical thing saying we're just buying as much time as we can for Artemis to free hit towers?
Now, out of complete fairness, right there, they had an advantage in terms of members, and their team fight was going fine. They had killed Blazes, they were up 4-3, they were driving them out of the Rift Herald. They should have just turned back for it, right? You would have forced a re-engagement coming out from the side of 𝘀𝗀cie, and I guess you would have at minimum forced Blazes TP before giving up the Rift Herald while bottom side was equalized, and you end up walking away with an advantageous amount of gold.
Coated locked under tower, but the counter strike is gone, and it will be a kill going the way of 𝘀𝗀cie. Coated forced to flash away. 𝘀𝗀ie actually, pardon me, actually finding a fair bit of damage onto 𝘀𝗀 as I get a case of the hiccups, and maybe 𝘀𝗀cie maybe had a little case of the hiccups as they may have thought 𝘀𝗀 might have been able to pick something up on the backside of the fight. As Ego looking towards Blazes, the distortion has been used. But will Blazes give Ego a way in? Leaps his way forward. Taste the fear, taste the death, Blazes. Ego picks up his 2nd kill of the game, and Cerberus look towards their 2nd Drake of the game.
Blazes, what in the world was that pathing? You saw that 𝘀𝗀 was on your top side. You can walk into your top side. The wave was already going to shove. You had no way of knowing where anybody was on the bottom side of the map. You didn't have vision down there. All you knew that there was no one. It was in your jungle because of that shallow ward right above, or right below the dragon pit. That's just, I think, a little bit of sloppiness coming in from Blazes. We're going to see the top dive again. This is really good. Again, this is understanding from 𝘀𝗀cie that attacking for this Camille is putting that Camille into a great place against the likes of the Jax in the one-on-one, and it's putting Coded in a great place for the course of this game, because again, this is a skill matchup to start off, and if Camille gets ahead of the curve, all of a sudden the Jax isn't the same kind of counter pick that you would expect it to be when you pick this champion. And 𝘀𝗀 burning the TP, I thought was going to be the icing on the cake. I was like, okay, all of a sudden Blazes gets free lays in the mid lane, and they just have to walk away and not lose anything else elsewhere. But unfortunately, again, Blazes steps in the wrong place, they end up pulling 2nd Dragon, and things are okay for the side of Cerberus, not giving up too much in return.
Rebel. 'Tis the season of Chemtech rifts. Tra-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. And Cerberus have the first 2 drinks of the game as well.
Yes. We actually had a little bit of a discussion about this on the analyst desk before any of the games started today, being able to talk about the position you find yourself in, whether you want to be the team that's down 2 dragons, but you're up in terms of gold, 𝘀🐶, or if you want to be the team that's down gold, but you're up 2 dragons. In this case, I think our analysts would agree with me that Cerberus is probably in a better position just because they're only down about 500 gold in exchange for those 2 dragons, which is 100% worth it, because at this point, you'd want to be much further ahead. If you're the side of 𝘀🐶, you'd want this to be, 2,000-3,000 gold, if at all possible, just to make sure that you have some definitive, clear way of using this gold advantage in the coming fights that are going to come around the Dragon Pit. But unfortunately, it's 𝘀🐶that are going to have to figure out how to not have that happen.
It is engaging onto Pun, but there's no isolated damage for Ego because 𝘁𝗀𝗰 is here. Counter-strike locks Ego down under tower. Heartbreaker. Oh, is there the damage? 𝘁𝗀𝗃 needs one more. He's going to tank the 2 tower shots. He's going to fall, and 𝘀🐶get too aggressive, but now Blazes is here. Distort so forward. Can he land the ethereal chains? No, he cannot, and Ego will survive just like a bug in the house.
The mounted pressure on the top side of... Wait! Oh, okay, never mind. We're not worried about anything. I was waiting right there because I think they thought that Ego was going to back, and so I saw a Jinx rocket get launched out from Vit, and I was like, they're going to catch him when he backs, but he wasn't backing the entire time. It was actually Pun who was backing, and it hit him, I think, but it did 0 damage because he was full health at the time. So a little bit of off-screen action that did not matter in the slightest that I felt like pointing out the attempt of. But it is continued pressure being put on by the likes of 𝘁𝗀𝗰 into top lane, ends up getting traded back a little bit right there without much of a repercussion, just the 1-for-1. But more plates into the pocket of this 𝘁𝗀𝗀 means that, again, this is not the game plan that came out last time from 𝘀🐶. 𝘀🐶 attacked this 𝘁𝗀𝗀 as fast as possible, and at minimum, it is not Cerberus who have been able to do that. But 𝘁𝗀𝗰's getting out of this early game relatively unscathed, even though the 𝘁𝗃s has been feasting a little bit in terms of like the interactions with Blazes and Coded, finding a couple of kills on his own. Again, this is a 𝘁𝗀𝗀 pick that's going basically untouched, which is kind of a thing on its own to be fearful of if you're Cerberus, even though they've got a composition that does well into what 𝘁𝗀𝗀 is able to do with like Lissandra and Jax and things of that sort.
And I want to touch back to what we were talking about with regards to having the Drake stacks versus having the gold advantage against a Chemtech Rift. Ace in the hole, Blazes being forced out of lane essentially, which will mean Artemis should be able to pick up another tower. It'll be the first tower of the game, going Cerberus's way as well. But on the topic of the Chemtech and the Chemtech Rift, the reason why we're talking about, having a goal lead being so impactful is because of those Chemtech zones, the fog zones. It just allows you to snowball the game, as Yado is trying to snowball his way out. Well, no, not really. He doesn't have a Nunu. He's got no snowball. He's got a super mega death rocket. Won't connect. Oh, but the procs and the concussive blows are there. Blazes will be able to get his first kill of the game.
I wonder if we get a moment of reprieve, because I've actually been meaning to talk about this 𝘁𝗃s pick and how it interacts with this this fog zone and things of that sort. Yeah. Because I've been alluding to the fact that I think there was a better pick that works actually better into the 𝘁𝗀𝗀, and it accomplishes similar things to the 𝘁𝗃s. I would argue even better things than the 𝘁𝗃s inside of the composition they have designed right now. But Ego is 19. Do you know what that means? That means that he is a zoomer, and that means he doesn't know the champion I'm going to suggest, because it's too old of a champion as we get to watch back the top lane play. It was nice, again, just finding a gank into Pun, and they aren't able to get Ego because he walks under tower, and the 𝘁𝗃s, again, with a Gore Drinker, with the W, it's just too much healing back and forth. What a nice flash, too, from Ego, able to get out of that situation just to make sure he was going to find his way out. Blazes, what happened on the back end of this one? He hits the distortion. It looks like he waits for the ethereal chain, just waits a little bit too long as Ego is able to walk out effectively. And afterwards, again, you have this rocket that he was trying to catch him. This is what I was talking about a second ago. See, they actually grabbed the replay. Would you imagine that VETV was able to snag that? But again, it was not actually the 𝘁𝗃s who backed. It was the Jax who had backed at that point.
Okay, so I want to go back. Actually, I want to play a game with you, Robot. I want to try to guess the jungler.
How about you guess this ratio as you have a fight coming up right now? There's a setup. They're trying to take this Chemdrake, making sure that that's not going to start stacking on the side of Cerberus.
Ego going into the Rift is going to be able to steal it, and the side of Cerberus onto 3 Drakes. There's a teleport that's been cancelled, and this is just going to be a 4v4 fight. P tanking so much damage. Blazes being forced out of this fight, and Artemis has been untouched the entire time. 𝘁𝗀𝗰 will go down, but so will Ego. Both junglers down so far. Vit's going to get sniped, and going to get taken down. H3 will fall as well. 𝘀🐶 dropped 3 members, and Cerberus only dropped 1. Cerberus win the fight. Cerberus take the Drake.
It's a setup now that Cerberus is completely comfortable being in. The only redemption for the side of 𝘀𝗀cie is going to be the Caitlyn or the Jinx pick in the bottom lane, which just got beat down in the course of that fight. 𝘀𝗀age's trying to get something back, but he's not even get the kill against 𝘀. That's so sad. It was so close to being one auto attack would have been more than enough to actually work right there, but it just doesn't. As all of a sudden, Cerberus have kind of taken this, they've been a brick wall, basically absorbing pressure after pressure after pressure from 𝘀𝗀cie, who've been trying to find something here. The steal from the 𝘂𝗃s, able to snag away the dragon, and then pressure put onto 𝘁. Very important caveat here is that 𝘁 on this Jinx with his entire front line kind of getting dropped meant that, 𝘂𝗃s, Yato, or my apologies, Ego, Yato were able to put pressure into him far earlier in the fight than Artemis was ever actually, driven into whatsoever from the side of 𝘀𝗀cie, and that's what cost this fight really heavy. Because again, in this situation, it feels like the Jinx was very close to being able to pop off. One excited proc during that fight might have actually made that big of a difference, but nobody able to be focused down.
Still, this is a close game. We're talking about 1,000 goals separating the two sides, and I do wonder how different these fights look if both 𝘀𝗀 and 𝘀 are there, because I think if 𝘀𝗀's there, all of a sudden you've got very easy access to the Caitlyn of Artemis.
Oh, wow. This was a situation where 𝘀 actually opted for the fight. It's really shocking that this ended up working out. Oh my goodness, he had to be on fractions of a health bar, maybe double digits health right there from 𝘀 after that Q auto attack had actually come through. That was so tilting from the likes of 𝘀𝗀 as he almost won the kill. He might have been single digit. He really was close. Did this Jinx rocket catch afterward? Is that why they're replaying it?
Oh my god!
𝘀 v9. That's insane. He was crazy last week. I'm not afraid to say it. He's insane. He's one of my most improved players over the course of this play. He deserves hype. I love 𝘀.
Would it be a bit too memey, a bit too rude if I say, well, that's not very hard for him to be the most improved player?
It would be, but you're also referring to a lot of top laners in their sophomore split that are. 𝘁𝗍𝗃 is right there, man. I don't know what to tell you. That was a cheap shot. I'm sorry, 𝘁𝗍𝗃. You didn't deserve that.
Sophomore, I don't understand that. Is that something I'm too British to get? As Ego will die, he's in the wrong side of the jungle. 𝘀𝗀cie are going to be able to get a kill. 𝘀𝗀cie won't be able to get a shutdown because they killed Ego in the previous fight, so that bounty had already reset.
And staying, as it pertains to like team fighting gold and things of that sort, I feel as though this game's actually just going to boil down to whether Cerberus get this soul point. If they get the soul, they just win the game. If they don't get the soul, I feel like there's a lot of ways in which 𝘀𝗀cie can actually take this team fight. There's pressure from LeBlanc that can find its way into a number of different members on the side of Cerberus. The 𝘁𝗆 set up decently in the side lane to continue attacking the Jax, especially if they get in another kill or so. The 𝑉𝑖EGO is scaling. The Jinx is in a really good place. I feel like they've got the makings of a team fight that could end up working for them. The problem is being down 3 dragons and a Chemtech soul is not going to get you anywhere in the course of the grand scheme of things for the likes of 𝘀𝗀cie. Cerberus, really all they have to do is get themselves in a comfortable position to say, all we want is the fight around the dragon, or all we want is to be able to kind of drive the stake into the heart of 𝘀𝗀cie, whether that's by taking the team fight, trading it for Baron, and using it to siege the remainder of the map, whether that means actually just flipping for the soul and grabbing that one, because Ego obviously was able to snag it away from Killer Queen in the last fight. Literally, they have so many options to close out this game. It's difficult for 𝘀𝗀cie. It feels like they have to play perfectly over the next few minutes just to make sure, especially in 1 minute, when this next dragon is going to be up, and all of a sudden the entire game rides on the line of not giving up one of the most powerful souls we've seen inside of the game.
And you say they have got to play perfectly. I'd say they just have to play perfectly, specifically in 30 seconds time. They need to ensure Cerberus do not get that Chemtech soul. If Cerberus get the Chemtech soul, it's game over at that point. Maybe 𝘀𝗀cie could pull out a miracle, but it would be a true Christmas miracle if they are able to do it. 𝘀𝗀cie at the moment have priority in the river. They have control over it, trying to poke down Cerberus as Yato goes in. 𝘁𝗀𝗃 comes through. Artemis takes a fair bit of damage. 𝘀𝗀ie trying to look to get into the backline. Does he have the Hextech ultimatum? He does, but he's not going to be able to go in. And Unofficial's going to take down 𝘀𝗀ie. 𝘀𝗀ie dying with the ultimate still available. And 𝘀𝗀cie are getting run down. His 2 kills already for the side of Cerberus. They're going to be able to find a slow one to Killer Queen. 𝘁's going to tank the 8 in the hole. Boy, that's a lot of damage. And Cerberus have just a free access towards the pit. Killer Queen, I don't think he's going to be able to even try to contest this. That's a free soul for Cerberus.
heroics coming out from the likes of Yado and 𝘀𝗀𝗶. They hold the line on the front of that fight. They make sure that 𝘀𝗀𝗋 doesn't have a clear line of sight on the likes of Artemis, and it allows them to dump damage into the front line coming out. Coded goes down during that, 𝘁3 goes down during that, and all of a sudden, Vit is throwing rockets into this team, doing a bunch of damage, but nobody has gone down yet. The excited hasn't happened, and they have run out of frontline tank to be able to soak any damage at all, and that leads to Cerberus in a very advantageous position. I mean, you're talking, we're scrapping the gold altogether. They could be down gold. This soul is more than enough to just take a game, and now 𝘁𝗀𝗰 going down almost certainly means the Baron.
Yado cutting off 𝘁𝗀𝗰's escape, and well, 𝘀𝗀𝗶 locking him in place. It's a Baron that will go the way of Cerberus, and Pun with the Hextech Soul, just trying to kill Coated.
Tragic.
And you're already seeing the issue, the exact issue that exists with a Chemtech Soul, and there's not much that the side of 𝘀𝗀𝗋 are going to be able to do. So 1-for-1 overall, Cerberus pick up the Baron.
It's a very solid situation to be in for the likes of Cerberus. I mean, there's almost no chance anything bad happens to them at this point. They're up 4,000 gold and with Chemtech Souls in their back pocket. They've got Artemis on 4 kills. It's just a matter of time, it feels like, before they really just grasp fully at an entire game. I haven't seen really a comeback mechanic from this soul. It feels like there almost isn't one just because of how hard it is. I mean, imagine everybody getting a free Scion ultimate at the end of every fight. Like, you can't even put a gold value on that for just how valuable it is to be able to throw in damage, especially for like marksman and things like that. Yes, they get a little bit of reprieve. I'm not even sure why we're viewing the bottom lane play. We don't care at this point. It just didn't matter. A play onto 𝘀𝗀𝗋s means, or play a kill for 𝘀𝗀𝗋s is a kill for 𝘀𝗀𝗋s, but that's about all you're getting in response to what is effectively the most powerful, or one of the most powerful team fighting buffs you can have inside of the game of League of Legends nowadays.
Also, I don't get why people keep calling it a Scion passive. It's a Scion and 𝘁𝗃𝗃, because you can press abilities, and I feel like that's equally disgusting.
I call it Scion passive just because you come back to life and then you slowly die over time. I get the idea behind pressing abilities, but like, I feel like if I'm describing this to somebody playing the game new, I would rather hear it's a Scion ultimate than like a 𝘁𝗃𝗃 ultimate, because a 𝘁𝗃𝗃 ultimate is just like, oh, so you're stationary or you died anyway.
I would just like to say it's you come back to life for 5 seconds, or for a few seconds. I wouldn't even call it a Scion, but that's me, and that's why no one understands the game when I explain it to them, and none of my friends want to play the game. But enough about me and my lack of friends playing League of Legends. 5k gold lead for the side of Cerberus. Chemtech Soul Elder in 3 minutes as well, Rebel.
I want to come back to the point I was trying to make earlier, although I'm not going to get a chance because they're just going to jump onto Pun once again. They even find him? They're not even going to find him. They don't have anything. In fact, 𝘁𝗀𝗰𝗋's getting run down during the course of this.
𝘁𝗀𝗰 says, maybe I can kill a punter quickly enough, and no, he's not even going to be able to land the Heartbreaker. This is just all going the way of Cerberus. 𝘁3, the next member on the menu for Cerberus, and he will get gobbled up. Artemis just kiting his way towards, doing damage onto the inner tower as well. He's actually going to get locked under tower almost, going to be able to go golden before the concussive blows do stack up. And I think this might be the game-ending play for Cerberus.
The eventual, I think, swap. Okay, 𝘀𝗀𝗋 is able to try for something, but Yado really quick on the trigger finger right there with the Zhonias. This just ends the game, unfortunately. 𝘀𝗋𝗋 is not going to have any effect right now over the bearing of what the end of this game is going to be. You can even see that Ego is taunting him a little bit just off the back of the 1v1 not being able to go in 𝘀𝗋𝗋's favor, let alone the entire team he has to bring down. As Cerberus equalizes, this was a rough first game. We swapped the identities of the junglers here across both teams, and while I think 𝘀𝗋𝗋's had a better, or my apologies, 𝘁𝗀𝗰 had a better early game than what the Viego did previously from the likes of Ego, you cannot doubt the fact that the dragon stacking was way too easy. A couple of really, really good decisions from Cerberus early put them in a very solid mindset and got them those early dragons, which made it nigh impossible to come back from.
And it's been a case in both this game and game one team stacking up all of the drakes and one team just looking comfortable around the objectives, being able to secure them. And just like 𝘀𝗀𝗋 were in game one, here in game two, Cerberus in the driving seat, Cerberus not allowing 𝘀𝗀𝗋 back into the game.
It's we get to a very interesting standstill now where all of a sudden 2 games in a row dragon stacking has made a world of difference for both teams, and now it is back to the red side for 𝘀🐶, who had that benefit in game number 1 to be able to work with, and thinking maybe, okay, now they don't have to play the 𝘂eGO, they can play a response to the 𝘂eGO and forcing 𝘂eGO into that situation. Maybe that's the kind of key difference here, is that the 𝘂eGO is so strong, taking it on blue side or giving it up is just not an acceptable option here for either of these teams. So we'll see if they opt to continue that strategy in game number 3. We'll see if 𝘀🐶can actually test and see if they can take the first win off of Cerberus this entire split.
Okay, and with that, we're going to be jumping on into a short break. When we return, we will be getting our analysts, 𝘀cie and Tim's thoughts on the game. But stay tuned, we'll be right back here at VCS English. Love you, 𝘀cie.
You wanted it that way.
Welcome back, guys. It is 1-1. We're all tied between Cerberus and 𝘀🐶as we are getting ready to jump on into our third game. Now, Tim, I'm going to jump straight to you because I know you weren't a fan of a certain pickup in the jungle for the side of 𝘀🐶.
Yeah, I think don't pick 𝘂eGO. I think the champion does have potential and he has certain spots where he can be strong, but the problem is, if we think back, how did 𝘀🐶 win game 1? And it was just Killer Queen getting a good early game, getting that one invade, then consistently just ganking and having pressure on the map. 𝘂eGO is just not able to do that. He doesn't have the 1v1 power that Kindred has on level 3, and he doesn't have the gank setup as well. And Kindred specifically has a lot of damage, and he had really, really good setup on his lanes with TF in particular. So I think just go back to something early aggressive. It doesn't have to be the Kindred. It can be even something like the 𝘁𝗶𝗺, for example, like the 𝘁𝗏 we've been seeing a bit. So just give him something he can impact the map with.
Now, Tim, I guess good news for you is the fact that technically in game 1 we had 2 𝘂eGOs, in game 2 we had 1 𝘂eGO, so I guess in game 3 there won't be any 𝘂eGOs being picked up. But 𝘀cie, there must have been more wrong in that game for 𝘀🐶than just the 𝘂eGO pick.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they tried to punish the top lane of the match, and it kind of worked out for them in some part of the early game where they went like with this dive play, and it just barely worked out for them. But overall, I would say the 𝘁𝗃 didn't punish the Jax that much. Also, I would have preferred the Ignite 𝘁𝗃 there because you want to play around this side, you want to smash open the Jax because eventually you just get outscaled there, and that just didn't happen this game. Also, on the 𝘂eGO pick, I think the 𝘂eGO pick isn't like terrible or anything per se, but you need to play towards your champion's strength, and both junglers in this series just didn't. I mean, 𝘂eGO not really an early game skirmisher, and they just skirmish all the time in the early game, and play into a 𝘁𝗃 who just got 3 kills he all shouldn't have gotten. I mean, 𝘁𝗍𝑠 was gifting him kills in the early game there, and yeah, 𝘂eGO just had an easy one this game.
So something that I do want to bring up, because I feel it was one of the differences between game 1 and game 2, was the fact that 𝘀🐶 didn't have, you know, the 𝘂𝗶𝗹𝗀 roam ability that they had from game 1, courtesy of the Twisted Fate pick. And do you think that was one of the things that really hampered them in this game, not having that roam potential? Tim, I'll go to you first on that one. Sorry.
I think it hampered them a bit. I think especially TF ultis from Blazes later on to continuously force catches were really nice, and I think he couldn't really do that on the LeBlanc. I think overall LeBlanc should be able to get early pressure on the map, of course, but he wasn't really able to, so I think that was a big issue for them.
And 𝘀cie, actually, your thoughts as well on this?
I think a little bit, yes, but also another note, just the individual performance of Blazes wasn't that up to the task. He was on the LeBlanc, he was like getting picked off despite being such a mobile champ with that excellent passive where you have to make the enemy basically guess who you are, and he didn't really make use of that. Also, he had like this one top lane roam where he was trying to kill Pan and just barely missed out on the chains. I think he just waited a little bit too long and then just let Pan live for no reason at all. And LeBlanc is a champion, but you just cannot do that. You need to get bowling in the early to mid game, and he did quite the opposite of that. There was also like this one skirmish where 𝘁𝗀 kind of rolling because they left Artemis instead of Cerberus to take bot lane platings while they were doing the Rift Herald play. Blazes was getting caught off there for the first time. And this was actually a disastrous fight for Cerberus, which almost turned the game around, where like there was this super mega death rocket that was field golding between the members of Cerberus. And it could have been this fight where 𝘀🐶 turns it around again in the early game, and it was just very close to being very bad for Cerberus, but at the end, 𝘀🐶 couldn't reward themselves there.
And Tim, going back to you, how do you think this game 3, the final game of the series, is going to break down to essentially this jungle matchup between 𝘀𝗰𝗃 and 𝘂o once again?
Yeah, I think that both sides have kind of shown that even if a lane gets ahead, they can't really just win with that alone. I think the jungle, basically whoever had the early pressure in the jungle won the game. So I just want to see 𝘀𝗀𝗃 on something that can get early pressure and can impact the map, that can help out his team. And we will see in draft if they're going towards it. They have red side once again, so they do have another counter pick, or the counter pick overall. And I think overall, from what I've seen, they've just both sides have been playing better on red side. Also, those champions are not picked. It's the champions from last. It's last draft. So.
It's the last draft. I saw one of the casters rubbing his eyes in disbelief for a second.
Yeah.
But 𝘀𝗀𝗃,
They are
Tim,
suffering
we're
with
to
us.
draft. Take us away.
Yeah, where do we start? A lot of jungle attention I just see. Nidalee going out, as well as Talon and the Graves, and also the Sin, which of course leaves the 𝘂𝗀 open, which might just get first picked again for 𝘂𝗀. I hope to not see it. And we get the Twisted Fate. Yeah, Twisted Fate is actually a good first pick. I mean, 𝘀𝗀𝗃 was doing well in the first game with it. It got banned in the second game, and now Cerberus gets their side, their choice, their opportunity to make the best out of the Twisted Fate pick, which is of course something you can influence the whole map with, and that is something that Cerberus of course likes to do.
It is a wonderful pick, because what we've seen in game 1 as well is that 𝘀𝗀𝗃 could only do those aggressive things, those invades, those ganks, because he had a setup and because he had to push. And no, okay,
No.
I'm refusing to see that. Caitlyn, also good pickup. I mean, she has been really strong in lane for both sides. Yes, Vitt and H3 had some awkward lane moments against the other side, but still, I think it is a good pick. And I mean, yeah, it's probably going to be 𝘀𝗃𝗃 as an answer.
Might just be 𝘀𝗃𝗃. I mean, they just hovered the Trundle. I would have liked the Trundle into this invisibility on the other side of what 𝘀𝗀𝗃 has picked. I mean, it's probably like some bug going out with the draft overlay. I mean, they didn't really log in the jungler, and they're already onto the next picks. But yeah, 𝘀𝗃𝗃 very likely here. I wonder though why they hover the Jarvan, because that might also get picked up.
And I wanted to jump in quickly, Tim, because you mentioned the 𝘂𝗀𝗃, and obviously we don't like it. But Nocturne would have been so good, because it counters the Twisted Fate as well. You just press R, and the Destiny's useless.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, Nocturne is broken. No, I really think that his ultimate alone, the utility you have, and how he can break up enemy cohesion and communication is so easy with the Nocturne ult, of course. Also stopping things like the TF ultimate, like the TP is just so strong. And on the other hand, what we are now seeing is that Jinx is being banned out, so the Thresh Jinx comp is being banned. I would expect that maybe Aphelios is also going to be taken out, because he does, especially on the early levels, of course, have his green gun, so his range gun, so he can hold his own, I think, against the Caitlyn, at least for a while. And there we see the ban. Gwen, on the other hand, they don't want to deal with coated Gwen again.
And 𝘀𝗀𝗃, I wonder if this is going to be Artemis defaulting back to his Xayah pickup. We've seen Artemis hesitant to go for the Jhin Misfortune meta, and usually opting a lot towards the Xayah. I think it's his second most played champion this play, outside of the Caitlyn.
I wonder what other options he really has left, because I mean, they had the option to pick 𝘀𝗃𝗃. They opted not to pick it, and Caitlyn was on the other side. So, like, there's only one SC AD carry that was on the board, and that is the one that Vitt has locked in. So he's really in a rough spot, because this Aphelios ban is also pincering him further. And I think Xayah is his most likely choice now. But you can still pick Jhin, of course, in the VCS English podcast. It's not a very liked pick, but this is kind of the situation where you maybe have to even pick it to have a good laning phase here. And the Twitch,
No way.
it is a very risky gamble for him. I mean, he might pick it. It's very good in
I
the
think
late.
it is locked in. Yeah, it is locked in.
Yeah. Very rough laning phase, but it is Artemis. He's very individual skill. If he just survives lane and loses it somewhat gracefully, I would say this pick can be very, very strong in the mid game. And yeah, maybe even the ambushes alone can be very detrimental to getting the third win on the board, or the third game win for Cerberus here, and maybe not making drop.
And this time, Coated goes for the Jax that was talked about earlier as well in the broadcast. I think Jax, really strong champion, especially into what the team of Cerberus is bringing. I mean, Jax basically counters everybody. Jarvan, yes, he has okay damage outside of his auto takes, but also he wants to auto take. You have, of course, Twisted Fate cards who can be blocked, and then the Renekton stun that can be blocked in Twitch only has auto take. So I really, really like the Jax pickup here for Coated. He can be not only a strong split pusher, but also win team fights just because his E makes him so tanky. And then I'm not sure about Twitch. I would have seen a Jhin here. I mean, usually Jhin very decent into Caitlyn, kind of these contested push and have a good laning phase. But I guess we see the Twitch, so it's gonna be wild.
I still can't believe that we've got a Twitch. I'm actually trying to check when the last time Twitch was played in the VCS, and it's a long time ago. So if there's anyone that we'd want to see bringing out the Twitch onto the Rift, it is Artemis. So yeah, this is kind of hype.
You could call it that, yeah.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think Cerberus is kind of a bit on the clock there because the Renekton will get brutally outscaled by this Jax, and they also kind of need to get this Twitch flash lane going well for them, because otherwise it might just be doomed for them considering the damage department. There's a lot of things that Coach can just do with the Counter-Strike, as Coach Tim earlier said, and I have a feeling that we might get the first loss on the side of Cerberus here.
Okay.
I have to disagree. It is VCS, so the worst draft will win. So I say Cerberus 2-1. Easy.
But didn't Cerberus win game 2 and they had the better draft? And Tim is now speechless. So with that, we're going to be beating a... Go on. Final words, Tim, before we jump into the game.
No, just go in.
Okay, we'll be hearing more from Tim and 𝘀cie after this game. Rebel will jump back in. And Rebel, do you want to hazard a guess as to when Twitch was last played in the VCS?
I'm going to guess 2017.
Season 8, 2018. It got 3 games, 2 wins, and it was actually played by one of the players who still plays in the VCS, who you might recognize by the name of Slader. No, not Celebrity. Let's try. It was also played by No Way player. I mean, technically he's a sub on a team.
Does that mean he's playing? We can get into technicalities later. What's more important is I love this champion. This is my favorite ADC in the entire game. I am beyond elated to see somebody actually pick this up. And also, despite the laning phase, which could be rough just because of the Morgana Thrush matchup, it's actually really good into the Caitlyn in the later stages. The ultimate allows him to outrange her. The amount of damage that you can load into an entire team when you're trying to set up a siege against the likes of a Twitch. Usually compositions, when you talk about just how you're trying to architect fights and how they look, usually favors really heavily how a Twitch wants to play into a team.
Well, that's a flay coming through instantly, and Artemis already. Look at the damage onto Vit. That is disgusting. So, as a bit of a rat connoisseur yourself, then Rebel, I want to talk about runes, because you can see different runes. Sometimes you could maybe even see a Hail of Blades, press the attack. We know how strong Lethal Tempo is in preseason. So, what do you make of the PTA choice here?
I think when it comes to absolute top level, Lethal Tempo and Press the Attack are both good. Here, it seems as though the decision for Artemis is actually to make sure that if trading potential is to come through, if they have the better of the two, which obviously has been the case, that the laning phase has gone well for Cerberus multiple times, Lethal Tempo slows down the amount of trade damage you get. Here, what the value of the Press the Attack brings is that if you come out of stealth, get the triple attack, and you get the expunge out with the use of the E, the amount of trade damage you throw onto a Caitlyn is just impossible to deal with for her. She cannot respond unless she gets a full, like a trap, a 90 caliber net, that kind of thing off, and it's just not that viable here, especially in the very, very early stages. So I've loved that Artemis, despite having a little bit of range disadvantage against the likes of the Caitlyn to begin with, immediately at level 1, level 2, is using that Press the Attack to shove back the Caitlyn Morgana lane to make sure one of the biggest aspects is open, which is that, of course, Twitch, when he presses his Q, goes invisible, gets to roam, gets to attack, and especially when you're looking against the side of the Viego, when you're looking against the side of a team that is susceptible to movement across the map, they want to be the ones moving as quick as possible. Twitch wants to own the bottom lane so that he can get out and about quickly.
And 𝘀cie trading onto Pun, but he's so low. Surely he's going to have to flash this, because Pun has flash as well. And 𝘀cie will flash as Pun just stares him in the eye until 𝘀cie eventually blinks and relinquishes his dominance in the top lane.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a lantern in. 𝘀cie, you're too far forward. Oh, the death sentence as well onto Vit. You both are gonna die. Well, maybe not. Vit's gonna survive, but Artemis picks up a first blood.
𝘁𝗀𝗶 setting up really nicely there for the likes of the 𝘀𝗀, just not allowing for the Black Shield to have any sort of counterplay and being able to get the kill onto the Twitch just to begin things in the laning phase. They understand what this lane can do. I'm pretty sure Artemis was the one who hovered this last week, and I got really excited about it, but then he decided to pull it off the board, and it's clear they've been prepping it. This is something that they've gotten ready for specifically the Caitlyn matchup, and you love to see it right here, as well as getting Ego ahead further with a little bit of kill participation. Look at that. I mean, what is H3's reaction time being able to use? The Black Shield just not effective in that quick of time span. So unfortunately, not able to get that away from that Thresh hook and the Thresh Lantern, and really close to being able to capitalize on a second kill. If Press the Attack was still available, I think Artemis might have stepped up, tried to get that one off, used the Expunge one more time, and then flash out from underneath the tower to get the kill against Vid as well, but had just used it on the likes of H3.
Well, so far so good for Cerberus. They are ahead. And we've got our first strike of the game spawning in a few moments' time, and we'll see whether we have another team being able to hoard all of the Drakes to themselves, starting off this game with a Cloud Drake.
It's a position that normally you would want the Caitlyn and Morgana to have all of the shove-in, where, like, you'd be able to make a play for the Dragon on the bottom side, especially since, like, I mean, your mid lane is going to be usually losing, but you can attack it, which is what 𝘀𝗀𝗃 is actually doing now. What a perfect play from 𝘁𝗀𝗶, who's making a play for himself to be one of these main contenders right now as MVP of the game, just because already the massive bot side play and the play right there to defend his mid laner means that Cerberus gets to maintain control of bottom river. There is no kind of aggression to fall on to the likes of Yada, which would have broken out Blazes to fight into the bottom river. But here you can see 𝘁𝗀𝗶 still just being a pest, making sure Ego is completely free, making sure that Artemis has complete control of bottom wave. There is nothing for the side of 𝘀𝗀𝗃 to do on bottom side. And again, this dragon stacking seems to be a crucial part to the strategy here for some of our top level teams. It is clear that Cerberus, after that first game, are not letting this one fall to the wayside.
And it feels bad when you're playing Caitlyn Morgana and you don't have Prio in the river. Blaze is now looking towards Artemis. We'll just stick the Lantern out to safety. And 𝘁𝗀𝗶, there for his ADC, there for his mid laner, there for everyone right now with those Dark Passages.
𝘁𝗀𝗶 is flexing on the Thresh. It's not even the Twitch that's impressing me. It's 𝘁𝗀𝗶's Thresh that's impressing me more than anything right now, as they've gotten off to a very quick lead and quick start for the likes of Cerberus, just off the back of that Thresh, doing a fair amount of work pretty much across the board. We love to see that. Looking into other lanes as well, this is adapted from, I know BTS is really, really popular with this, where they draft winning lanes in a couple of different positions, specifically winning solo lanes with the likes of the Renekton in an attempt to just not have to worry about anyone else across the map, so that all their resources can go into a specific place, whether that be Glory or into their bottom side with Amina. And here Cerberus is taking on a similar strategy. They don't really have to worry about Yado, they don't have to worry about Pun, and their bottom lane got off to such a good start, they don't have to worry there. So now it's just about, where does Ego want to put on pressure? Where does Ego want to get this advantage going?
So far, we haven't really seen Ego making any ganks. 𝘁𝗀𝗃 able to leap his way out, almost taken down by Pun, who is having a lot of fun in this matchup. We saw in game one, 𝘁𝗀𝗃 being able to do very well into Pun. That was a Gwen against a Gragas matchup. But here on the Renekton, Pun dominating the lane.
It's awesome to see, because again, Pun's last split was not something that, it wasn't necessarily horrid, right? But for a top level team, we were expecting a better top lane play, and we thought, okay, Poss, when he steps in, maybe is going to be the improvement. Maybe he needed the entire split, maybe they weren't able to slip him into the lineup, and then he walks in as the starter on day one, and we're like, wait, what? What happened? And Pun has been just low-key smurfing top lane pretty much the entirety of the split. Pun has been incredible for this team. There hasn't been much in the way of being able to beat him. He's been able to do, how to play both sides of the carry versus tank versus, sandbag versus snowball versus that kind of method as well.
There's a Destiny coming through by Yado, but he's a little bit too late to the party because Pun has already been taken down. Leap strike forward from 𝘁𝗀𝗃, who's burning down with the Ignite, not going to be able to heal up. Wait. Oh, Unsealed Spellbook. I got really confused for a second. I was thinking, where is the Ignite here? As Ego is waiting. Flag and Drag misses both members of a 𝘁𝗀𝗃, and he's going to have to take the embarrassing walk down the river.
I feel like I've seen this one before. We watched just last game as 𝘀𝗀cie. They played to their top side, and then the rest of the map, especially the 𝘁𝗀𝗀, really wasn't able to accomplish much. Here we see Cerberus again on the fight, pushing back 𝘁𝗀𝗋s to the best of their ability. And now, I mean, 𝘀𝗀cie can try to recapture, but they just lost one of their biggest tools, and there is no teleport on 𝘁𝗀𝗋s to come back into the fight, as all 5 members from Cerberus have surrounded the Rift Herald pit, and they still have the very entrenched 𝘁𝗀cie inside of this pit. They have no way to get onto the rat whatsoever. This just has to be abandoned. For the first time ever, 𝘀𝗀cie not going to flip around a Rift Herald when the opportunity is given.
Well, maybe it's a sign of some good things to come for the rest of the split and potentially playoffs as well. As 𝘁𝗀 says, hey, Coated, would you like to have a fun with a rat? Coated says no. 𝘁𝗀𝗶 says, hey, maybe you want to have some fun with a thresh. As 𝘁𝗀 shows up, spray and pray. And Coated will be having to pray after that one because he is dead and done. 2 kills over to 𝘁𝗀's 𝘁𝗀.
I wonder if anybody else could actually make this work, not because it's 𝘁𝗀 playing the champion, but because 𝘁𝗀𝗶 has just been smurfing on this thresh so far in this game. That is now the 3rd straight play, not just offensive, but defensive, that we've seen him be able to capitalize on. And while 𝘁𝗀 is up 2 kills, now has the entire top lane under his belt as well, which is just an enormous amount of gold for a 𝘁𝗀 to get off to a start to. Again, the expectation of the laning phase for the Caitlyn Morgana being a bit better was just completely ruined at level 1, and since that point, this bottom lane has been dominating. All of this spurned from this top side play, right? This was 𝘀𝗀cie, who are attempting to kind of get what is coded ahead on the Jax once again. This is his favorite champion, one of the ones he's been really known for. The Ignite knocked him down and ended up being the 1-for-1. They can't find anything on the rebound, but the entire team of Cerberus shows up just to make a play for that Rift Herald and are able to shove back 𝘀𝗀cie. Again, this 𝘁𝗀𝗀 is slow. They're attacking when they have this opportunity. It's the same with the LeBlanc. The LeBlanc takes a minute or two to really get into the game and start having an effect. And when your side lanes start falling apart because of this action from Ego, the movement from 𝘁𝗀, and when 𝘁𝗀𝗶 is absolutely killing the entire game, all of a sudden 𝘀𝗀cie's strategy really takes a nosedive because now you don't have a way to stall this game out until those champions really come into their own.
We came into this game thinking this would be the Ego versus 𝘁𝗀 show again, the jungle matchup. Ego on a job in lots of early game aggression. We've barely even seen Ego make a single gank. I don't even think we have seen Ego making a gank this game. It's so far just been the 𝘁𝗀𝗶 show as 𝘁𝗀𝗋s has to distort out of the flag and drag. Second Drake of the game is up, and Cerberus are looking to stack them up. As the Destiny will come through. Who is the focus on? There is a Boggs, and in comes Ego with the Lantern. 𝘁𝗀 will pick up 1 kill. 𝘁𝗀 is getting run down. So is 𝘁𝗀. He's going to try to Heartbreaker over the wall, but he will just burn to the poison. Ego also taking a few shots from Fit as 𝘁𝗀 almost able to get 𝘁𝗀s, but 𝘁𝗀s surviving with about 150 HP.
Looks like the last auto attack didn't actually go off from 𝘁𝗀. Not sure if he canceled it or what happened right there, or maybe just wasn't in range, but then the expunge just didn't have the number of stacks necessary. So not only would it have been more damage from the auto attack, but the extra stack of expunge might have made the massive difference against 𝘁𝗀's health bar. But it just doesn't matter because, again, it is Cerberus who are enforcing their willpower across the map. The combination of 𝘁𝗀𝗶's ability around, as well as having Ego now coming into his own on the Jarvan, starting to get tanky a little bit because it looks like he's building for a tank mythic, as well as Yado, who's been broken out. The LeBlanc can't respond. This was a top lane play that happened the entire time. We'll see whether it's a Pun v9 angle or whether or not Coated was able to actually find something. I'm waiting for another Q to come out. That was all that was necessary, as Pun on this Renekton just taking it to Coated while the rest of the map is also falling to pieces. 𝘀𝗀𝗋 is not even looking to any semblance of what they looked like in game number 1.
And maybe it was just a flash in the pan, as some might say, for 𝘀𝗀𝗋 in Game 1. They came in with a bang, maybe caught Cerberus out unawares. But Game 2, Cerberus looked to be in control. Game 3, again, Cerberus in control. And that 𝘀𝗀𝗋 that we saw in Game 1, it looks like, well, a thing of the past completely. And 𝘀𝗀𝗋 looked completely different from how they were able to perform in the opening game of this series.
But we're seeing the damage starting to come through. This is a Kraken Slayer Caitlyn, which is intriguing to me because we've seen mostly Gale Forces come out, but here the attempted additional damage into the front line. Because again, Ego has gone for Frostfire, so that's a much tankier Jarvan than we're accustomed to. You're seeing the Renekton get really big in the early game, which means the health bar needs to be shredded through. And so apparently Vit just feels the need to be this additional carry that is necessary for the entirety of the team. Not to mention, like a headshot Kraken Slayer proc probably is enough to almost outright kill 𝘁𝗀, which is really terrifying as 𝘁𝗀𝗋 tries to make a play to the bottom side.
Can he land the Spectral Maw onto 𝘁𝗀𝗋? Well, no, he's not really going to go for an H3, not close enough to follow up, and Artemis just says, yes, throw more resources my way, my
Nope.
pretties, and now instead just goes on to Vit. Okay.
What are you supposed to do? Another aspect of the Twitch that's really good to the Caitlyn. Caitlyn thrives because she gets to see other ADCs and she says, haha, I'm going to auto you from further away. But Twitch gets to go, haha, I'm invisible, and walk directly up to her, which is exactly what happened as Yada wasn't even needed right there. Pun, again, continuing to just clap this Jax in the top lane time and time again. This is the epitome of Cerberus just winning in every single position. Ego doesn't need to do anything this game. It feels like they're just ultimately winning in every single position, regardless of what else is happening across the map. Between the likes of the Twitch Thresh, who are going crazy on bottom side, and Pun, who is just manhandling in this top lane, it feels like there's just nothing for the side of 𝘀𝗀cie to accomplish.
You could literally be putting Ego on, what's the worst jungler that exists? An Udyr or a Viego.
You want any jungler?
Pardon?
Huh?
What? I don't know. But on
hearing
any jungler, and Cerberus would still be having pretty much the same result as how this game is currently going.
I agree. He hasn't been the most active on a Jarvan in the very early stages. Yato is absorbing yet another gank. Nice Sonya's. Ooh,
Yeah,
and a good
stopwatch
TP.
is the Heartbreaker, and as you mentioned, the teleport coming through. Pun wants this one. He's going to slice his way forward. It calls the Mekon to blazes, and oh no.
No way, Artemis. Artemis, you're crazy.
He's got spray and pray. Okay.
Nah, it doesn't need.
He's
Not gonna
smarter
pop
than
that. Yeah, it doesn't want to run into anything too crazy. It is a LeBlanc with a Ludens, which means that if he stands still for more than a second, he probably has problems. Ego, what are you doing? I know you're probably trying to set up a dive onto the likes of Blazes right there since you've got your bot lane readily available, but just a little bit too far forward. Again, his mistakes actually don't matter all that much. I love that the rest of the team is also starting to coalesce around this mid lane just because there's nothing left for them to do in side lanes. Pun is just sitting here catching minions, and any time that Coded steps up is just taking that away. Artemis is able to do anything. You're seeing him almost on 2 completed items at this point with the Kraken Slayer. Makes him an absolute animal across the board. It's really, really hard to see how 𝘀𝗀cie gets back into this one. I guess Killer Queen is decently farmed at this point and has the potential of popping off in fights. Again, Blazes has not been put behind too far so far. With the Ludens completed, with 𝘀𝗀cie completed, maybe there's some semblance of the ability to fight back if you can find picks and stuff. But Twitch makes that really hard as well, because again, when you're half the time you're just invisible on the map, no matter where you're at, it makes it really hard to even use your vision to your advantage on the side of 𝘀𝗀cie if Blazes is looking to fish for something like that. This game is so hard for them to actually play out in the grand scheme of things. This is a second Rift Herald going into their favor that it feels like they just cannot compete against. This is such a different look. VCS oftentimes at this point in a game is so active and it's so bloody, and it's 𝘀𝗀cie constantly throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. They're willing to take any fight. But this series, they've played a bit more patiently, I suppose you could say, but Cerberus is using that to their advantage in this game number 3, where there is no contention for anything, and even if you do, you're just losing that contention.
This series hasn't even felt like ever one team particularly playing poorly. It's always felt like one team just playing very well.
Oh, wow.
They catch it onto Ego, but he's able to buffer the flag and drag and make his way out to safety. Has Merc Treads as well for a little bit of extra tenacity, as Pun is looking for this potential flank, potential collapse onto 𝘀𝗀cie, and 𝘀𝗀cie don't know what's about to come at their way. Flag is dropped. Ego will take the drag. Heartbreaker forward. Killer Queen will be able to get his 3rd kill of the game, and all of the kills for the side of 𝘀𝗀cie on Killer Queen's Viego. As now 𝘀𝗀cie are going to be able to get their first Drake of the game, and it is a Hextech Drake because we've got a Hextech Rift.
They find some fight back, and they get a response bounty here that comes out from the likes of the dragon coming out. And yeah, you do get a Hex Rift, which is quite nice. 𝘀𝗀cie, again, find a pick-off around one of these pits. The biggest thing is it seems like Cerberus is just content living out the laning phase fantasy that they've been wanting their entire lives, because nobody can compete in the laning phase. And so 𝘀𝗀cie says, okay, we'll group around neutral objectives. We'll take a dragon from you, but it just doesn't matter when you're down 4,000, what is about to be probably closer to 5,000 gold, all things considered, especially when the Twitch holds so much of that gold, when you're so much of the vital kind of portion of this composition inside of this ADC is just so far ahead that there's nothing to do. Even a position like this, like look at this, like Killer Queen can't possibly respond to that.
No, nothing much Killer Queen can do. But for the side of 𝘀𝗀cie, there are a few silver linings. By a few silver linings, I'm talking about one in specific. The fact that Killer Queen is one, he does have damage, and maybe if he can get to that disgusting Viego stage where he can start to pop off, maybe there's a way for 𝘀𝗀cie back into this game.
Maybe the way for 𝘀𝗀cie back into this game is to let Artemis get so powerful that Viego taking over the body is enough to win a team fight on the opposite side.
Oh, poor Blazes. It's a 2-on-1 right now. There's teleport coming through. 𝘁𝗻𝘀 and 𝘁𝗋 in the shadows as Blazes. Well, that's just going to be the clone that gets taken down. 𝘂𝗀 will get run down. 𝘁𝗀 will pick up his first kill of the game. And now they look towards 𝘁𝗀, whose dog will surely be running out soon. Flash forward. 𝘁𝗻𝘀 gets 1. 𝘁𝗻𝘀 gets 2. And 𝘁𝗻𝘀 gets the lantern out to safety. Oh, rats are such a pain sometimes.
Do you see why I love this champion? It turns situations where, like, normally an ADC would just walk in and you'd be able to walk out into a situation where you're like, I feel safe, and then out of nowhere, the ultimate is hitting you from halfway across the lane. He's hitting you from, like, where the midpoint is against when you're standing against the tower, and he came up when he was invisible, so you had no idea he was going to show up in the first place. It takes such a kind of a screwball approach to how some of these plays end up turning out, because there's just that information that's lacking from 𝘀𝗀𝗋 to be able to pull out right there. It's like, Blazes played that about as perfectly as he could have off the back of the dive. They ended up with a kill in response, and they could have walked away with their hands clean and been like, okay, we're done. We lost our summoner spells, but we ended up with a traded kill, and then out of nowhere, here comes the 𝘁𝗀, and he's able to respond to everything said and done. This was a dive that was set up from 𝘂𝗀 and Pun. They say, okay, we can get Blazes, and again, look at him. He doesn't dodge this. He ends up going for the counterplay onto 𝘂𝗀 with the distortion, and he's able to kite back Pun as well on the back end of this. You can see the Cataclysm kind of trap there and necked, and he turns around trying to catch Blazes, and the flash is able to get him out. But look, here's 𝘁𝗻𝘀, who steps up. Oh, they actually did see him. It didn't even matter. He didn't even use the Q to approach. Probably used it for movement speed on the way here, and just simply walked in and was able to kill everybody off the back of that ultimate using that advanced range.
Bye, 𝘁𝗀.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
You know how 𝘁𝗀 has better range than every other ADC? You want to know what it feels like when that happens to a 𝘁𝗀? Just watch a Twitch game.
Does 𝘁𝗀 have the best range? I thought it's just... Well, okay, yes, it is 𝘁𝗀. But
Yeah, that's right. That's
level
right.
18 is higher?
Just not a level 18. There's argument to be made for a bunch. I mean, Kindred with enough stacks has better range. Like, there's caveats to it. 𝘁𝗀's one of the highest ranges.
One of the highest. Well, I'm just being pedantic. 𝘁𝗀 looking to go in onto 𝘁𝗻𝘀. Ethereal Chains are going to be able to find his mark. Can they kill 𝘁𝗻𝘀? Yes, they can. And that means 𝘁𝗀 will steal the Twitch soul away, but he will die. Regardless, 𝘀𝗀 win the fight. You might have killed 𝘁𝗻𝘀, but you're all going to die for it. 4 members left standing for 𝘀𝗀, and 𝘀𝗀 will turn towards the Baron Nashor.
They don't have the most damage in the world, but since they have 20 free seconds to do anything that they want with, it doesn't matter that much because 𝘀𝗀 is not going to be able to contest. Best case scenario, I mean, if it wanted to come up here and try to, 50-50, or I guess, 95 or 99-1% it with like a 𝘁𝗀 Q or something like that, maybe that could have been a play, but that's never going to be attempted, and that's never going to work for the most part here for the side of 𝘀𝗀. As, I mean, the Twitch goes down, does not matter. It's shutdown gold, I believe, over to the side of 𝘁𝗀, who snagged that one in the end goal, but the Baron buff is just going to lead to so much damage that it's just irreparable here. You can see, what are you supposed to do if you're Vit, man? Like 𝘁𝗀𝘀 walked up on you, and you just had no idea.
𝘀𝗀 put it very well in our analyst chat, which is, you can kill 𝘁𝗻𝘀, but don't think that means you can be 𝘁𝗻𝘀. And I think that really sums up exactly what 𝘁𝗀 experienced. The Dark Binding comes through onto Pun. 𝘁𝗀 trying to come in from the flank. Where is 𝘁𝗻𝘀? 𝘁𝗻𝘀 is in the mid lane, so 𝘀𝗀 are nice and safe. They're going to take this 3v1. Are they going to get the kill? A Heartbreaker forward. They're looking for the damage. Ace in the hole. Pun goes golden, and now Ron OP on the way. Look who is on the flank. It's a pesky little rag. 𝘁𝗀 is dead. H3 will die. This is too much damage. And the poison will tick down. Usually you use poison to kill rats, but this rat uses poison to kill you.
This is it's a masterclass of Twitch play from the likes of 𝘁𝗻𝘀. I really hope this means that he's going to pull out the champion more, or that it's going to get some attention, because this champion is so fun to watch. I'm enjoying it right now. 𝘁𝗻𝘀 is stomping on it. 𝘀𝗀 is on the way to another win. The only thing that's coming back in the other favor is just that one dragon earlier slows down this soul point, but it just doesn't matter. Baron on 𝘁𝗀𝘀 means they're going to be able to take this bottom lane tower, probably the inhibitor. If they want, they could try to shift into mid lane, but it looks like Blazes kind of got ahead of that one quick enough to not have to worry about it. They're not going to get the inhibitor, just a tower here after everything, but there's no defense to the rat, just kind of consistently doing this, standing in mid lane. All of a sudden 10 seconds later he shows up in a side lane, and no matter what fight you think that you started to win, no matter what play you think is going to go your way, he completely takes it back from you.
You know, this Hextech Rift is the best Rift as well, or the best soul that 𝘁𝗀𝘀 can get, because even if it was a Chemtech Rift, he's not going to be dying. so he's not going to be able to use that soul. With the Hextech soul, well, you see how quickly people are popping. They're going to be popping even faster now as well, and it's just for 𝘀𝑠he. What can you do? This...
At this point, I mean, there is basically nothing to accomplish anymore. I mean, you're down 10,000 gold at 23 minutes. The only thing you can hope for is that this game stalls long enough for an 𝘀𝘀drake, which I don't think happens in the slightest. And if it does end up that maybe you can 50-50 that, and like the play ends up going in your favor just because you have 𝘀𝘀drake if you end up outsmiting, but you are hoping for miracle after miracle in a situation like that. 𝘀𝘀queens going to try maybe for one more play, but they cannot find an angle right now.
So now that we are 23 minutes into the game, I want to go back to your previous comment, Rebel, which was, it's not even Artemis impressing me, it's 𝘀𝑚𝑝 impressing me. Do you still stand by that?
𝘀𝑚𝑝 was incredible for like the first 10 minutes of the game and hasn't had to be anything else for the entire game. Like he didn't need to continue to be this insane smart. I think he's missed a couple of plays because he's been trying to predict invisibility. As you can see, Coded trying to run down Pun, but that's the best they've got is just trying that out.
Flag and drag, they find the knock up onto 𝘀𝑚𝑝, he flashes over the wall, split him on 2 members. 𝘀𝑎zes will use the distortion out, 𝘀𝑚𝑝 lands the death sentence. Everyone is dying, is this the Artemis pentakill? It might be a triple kill, Vit. Okay, just the double kill. Honestly, I think Cerberus should not end. They need to get a pentakill onto Artemis. This is the best opportunity Artemis has had of a pentakill all split.
That was absurd. He was maybe 2 auto attacks off from just killing every single member and nothing there. 𝘀𝑎zes tries to kill him, it just doesn't have the damage or even close to it to be able to bring him down, and then 𝘀𝑚𝑝 just pulls him to safety. There's no threat on Artemis right now that is not respondable to, and that's the best case scenario. Like this is just Artemis walking between lanes killing people.
Usually it's a support that's supposed to roam and do this, not the ATC. 11, 1, and 3. Artemis, at the start of the split, he was pulling out the Xayah. It was his pick. We see a replay. We don't care about this. I'm going to keep on talking about Artemis. Because he pulled out the Xayah. It was his pick. It started going really well. Everyone kept on banning Xayah. Preseason came. Even before preseason, Artemis started pulling out the Caitlyn. Now everyone's playing the Caitlyn. Now Artemis is pulling out the Twitch. Maybe we'll see some more ADCs playing with Twitch.
Maybe we'll have an opportunity to get some of that. To me, Cerberus is actually a little bit returning to old school form, just because there was a time and a place where this was pretty much their only tool for victory, was Artemis getting ahead like this over the course of a game and out team fighting the other squad. And as of late, again, since the mid-season split, we've seen a couple of times where it's been 𝘂𝑑𝑜 who's tested, Ego who's tested after kind of an incredible start to the splits. And in previous splits, this led to them kind of dropping series, dropping off the face, dropping from #1 ranking, and ending up, and it's been like a playoff Cerberus meme where they ended up losing in the first semifinals. But here now, I mean, they're able to rely much better on Pun than they had before, and Artemis is still this absolute weapon who is just going insane inside of games. So you can see even when the new age, the 𝘂𝑑𝑜 Ego combination is not really up to snuff, Artemis is always there to catch them on the other side, and Pun is also now kind of operating on all cylinders for this team. So many threats, it's just hard to see them actually losing a series for the entirety of this split.
Artemis has been fantastic so far this split. Ego, when he remembers how to drop Rift Heralds, has been great. As you've said, you've been very impressed with Pun this split. I know some of our other analysts aren't huge fans of Pun's performances so far. Oh, God. Okay, I mean, the Counter-Strike is one way to deal with the Twitch, to be fair.
It just means that Coded gets to live through one more rotation until his next Counter-Strike is up. The problem with that is, of course, if you Counter-Strike before the Twitch drops damage, then you die to the Twitch. But if you drop it and it's communicated properly, 𝘂𝑑𝑜 can hold gold card, and as soon as that Counter-Strike is down, that means he gets gold carded and dies to everybody else, or even just Artemis following up without the ultimate coming through, which is just as bad. So.
Trying to find some damage onto Pun are 𝘀𝑠he, but 𝘀𝑎zes just does not have the damage. This is a 5v5. 𝘀𝑠he know they need to drop everything right now. And I can guarantee you Artemis is thinking about a pentakill right at this point. He's 11-1, might even be a little bit higher already. Ego locked down. He'll be able to take the Lantern out to safety. Now there's no Lantern for Artemis, but just look at Artemis sitting in the backline. Doesn't need to do anything. A gold card comes through. Lockdown. Pun's going to get the kill on H3. There's no pentakill available for Artemis. 𝘀𝑎queen going to be able to find one back. Flag and drag comes through. Finds a 3-man knockup and ults over the wall. Pun getting run down. And somehow 𝘀𝑠he have found a 2v2. But now Artemis can start doing the right things. Oh, death centers from 𝘀𝑚𝑝 almost tagging on to Ego. But 𝘀𝑠he have to be really careful. They can't take this Drake because
Oh, no
still
way.
𝘀𝗰𝗋 has smite.
Go get him, Artemis. Oh no! Man.
Oh,
Oh,
can't do anything.
it's so tragic. What are you supposed to do? You can't see him coming. He just gets to run you down, and there's nowhere safe for you to actually be. And now this is going to be even worse. This is a team fighting ultimate to be able to work with. It's essentially just static shiv with true damage, just not much damage, but it's enough to set up the fight where you are not running anymore. There is no running from this Twitch who just drops an ultimate and is able to get this massive hex tech kind of ultimate out and about as much as possible. Is this just a desperation, a plea at the Baron or the red buff, something like this? They're going to try to set up some ability to maybe have counterplay. 𝘀𝗀𝗰 might try to flip for it, but I mean, if this goes wrong, they just lose the game. If it goes right, they stall the game, but it doesn't feel like this wins anything for them. It's a really bad scenario in a catch-22 where 𝘀𝗀𝗰 feels the need to try something, but it feels like all the cards have already been exhausted.
Well, that's going to be another card, the Destiny card, that hasn't been used by the side of Cerberus. This game has felt rather hopeless for 𝘀𝗀𝗋 for quite a while, and it's only going to get more hopeless. Artemis showing up, dishing down the pain. 𝘀𝗀𝗰 will get taken down. Artemis will find the kill onto H3, and now a 5v3 scenario. 𝘀𝗀𝗋 on the back foot, Cerberus on the front foot. And Cerberus saying, did you guys take a game off us in game 1? Well, guess what? We don't care. We are still the better team. You can still not match us. We can even play a Twitch for Pete's sake, and we will still dominate you. We will still run you down. It's been an incredible performance from the side of Cerberus as 𝘀𝗀𝗋 try to go for one final ditch play. Artemis denies the final tower shot. Artemis will survive. Cerberus will get their 10th series win of the Winter Split and remain undefeated.
They have one more test for themselves, and that's GAM. And that happens, I believe, on Saturday is what we said. If not, it's on Sunday. I can't remember. I'll have to make sure it's on Monday. My apologies. Monday.
Sunday.
Sunday. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah, it's on Sunday. That's the last kind of hump for them to be able to get over to potentially make a run for this undefeated split. When you're showing the ability for Ego and Yado to have a bunch of action at the beginning of the split, that's fantastic. I hope that this is not a worrying trend for them to have them kind of fall behind sometimes and be more quiet in games, because they looked a lot cleaner and a lot more dominant when they had those two running everything. But again, when you can rely on Artemis to go for something counterpick in the bottom lane, like a Twitch into a 𝘀𝗀𝗋, and to be able to pull out a performance like this, when you can expect Pun to have performances where he is solo killing Coded on a Renekton pick that they snag, this team is so hard to get a grasp on. How do you draft? How do you play around them? What are you supposed to do if you don't just get off to this massive early game lead like in game 1 that 𝘀𝗀𝗋 did?
Well, the 𝘀𝗀𝗋 hype train is completely dead now, Rebel. Well, I mean, it's not completely dead. 𝘀𝗀𝗋 still played admirably well, especially in game 1. And kind of looking at 𝘀𝗀𝗋 and their next series this week, they've got 𝘁𝗀𝗵𝗋, they've got Burst the Sky. Do you think that performance from 𝘀𝗀𝗋 is good enough for viewers to think, okay, the 𝘀𝗀𝗋 from what we saw in week 2, in week 3 is kind of back, and they can fight for these top 3 spots?
It's a predicament that they put themselves in, because now we've only really seen them have not particularly great performances. That first game felt like it was a bit more enigmatic now that we've seen the remainder of the series, just because they got that really nice Kindred kind of slot in, and it made this aggressive pick into the Viego, and all of a sudden the early game fell completely to pieces. And from there, it was just them cleaning up the game more than it was anything else. So now it's a matter of, okay, what does their game planning look like? Can they actually manifest that into some of the mid-tier teams like Saigon and like these other that are competing for what are the later spots? Because if they can't, or if they aren't creative enough to come up with a game plan as good as what they had in game number 1, things get very precarious. Do you just default to the Viego again and again and get run over at the earlier stages of the game? It's a hard position to find yourself in if you're 𝘀𝗀𝗋, because you don't want to refall. You're almost certainly locked for playoffs at this point in the league. You got like 1 full week and another short week, and you've already got 7 wins. You're feeling good about your position. But the last thing you want is to lose all of your momentum coming out of this week into the next week and into playoffs with no wins or having struggles against some of these other teams.
Well, Rebel, I'm going to let you go back to your Twitch fan rat chamber. We'll be hearing more from you for our second series when Team Secret take on 𝘁𝗀𝗵𝗋. But I've been noticing that one of our analysts has a very big smile on his face, and that's 𝘀𝗀𝗋. I think he's very excited to talk about the Twitch that we saw from Artemis. So let's bring 𝘀𝗀𝗋 and Tim back into the fold. 𝘀𝗀𝗋, pretty good performance, wasn't it, from Artemis?
Yes. It was, and I was doubting him, so gotta give credit where credit is due to 𝘀𝗻𝗺, my boy. I always said he's maybe the best player of the VCS with split, maybe the best AD carry. I mean, for sure the best AD carry, let's be real. He was the one putting in the meta when everyone was playing Jhin and Misfortune and was smashing everyone, forcing everyone to adapt to him or just lose. And now he kind of does it again, and this maybe just brings us to the next step. He can play basically whatever he wants. He's just better than the other AD carries, and I want to see more of him. And also giving a bit of credit to 𝘂cie, because I think without this early gank, it might not just be as easy for the Twitch to lane to Morgana Caitlyn. But I mean, 𝘀𝗀𝗻𝗺 just showed up, man.
Tim, your thoughts on that Twitch performance as well? Because 𝘀𝗀𝗺 just did not look like he could be contested, and that was into a Caitlyn Morgana lane as well.
I mean, that was illegal. How do you, like, this should be horrible matchup to play and to be in. So I honestly, like, I'm baffled how they managed to get through lane. And then, like, we talked about it, or I think you said it before the game. If they lose gracefully, like, this is a win. Well, they did not lose gracefully. They stomped brutally hard. And I think once something like a Twitch gets rolling, we saw in the game where he consistently just came out of nowhere, one-shotted somebody, and disappeared again into invisibility. And that's the strength of Twitch. You're basically, if you're fed, you're an assassin, but as an AD carry. And he really played that role very nicely.
And I want to switch to the 𝘀WWE point, the same kind of question that I brought up to Rebel. Looking at 𝘀TRY's remaining games, do you think that they can come out of this with some smiles and say, you know, we fancy our chances against Dragon Buffalo and against 𝘀𝗀𝗃 𝘀 and cement our spot in playoffs?
I think they can. I mean, they really looked very, very good in game 1, and think they also didn't really get stomped in game 2 and 3 either. I mean, maybe game 3 we could argue they got kind of stomped, let's be honest. I mean, 𝘀𝗀𝗻𝗺 just showed them how Twitch is to be played. And at this note, I maybe also need to apologize to 𝘂cie, because I was advocating a Jhin pick. Maybe Coach Tim can say something about this as well. But speaking of 𝘀XUI, I got kind of sidetracked there. They played better than we expected. They looked to be on the free fall, and this was against the #1 team, and they didn't look like they got completely washed over. So considering they still play, I mean, what's their remaining schedule? They play Dragon Buffalo, they play 𝘀𝗀𝗃 𝘀, they play SBTC, and they also play Team Secret. And all these series all of a sudden look winnable again.
Absolutely. Tim, I'll go to you, and then I'll get 𝘀nci's thought on the same question. MVP for the series?
𝘀𝗀𝗻𝗺. I mean, it has to be. I think mostly it's probably between 𝘀𝗻𝗺, 𝘂cie, and you could maybe say 𝘀𝗀𝗃, who had strong games, but it wasn't like he was flashing with this performance. But in the end, I think for me, the big difference is just game 1. I mean, game 1, 𝘀𝗀𝗻𝗺 still looked really good. They won lane, and 𝘂cie, he was not looking good. I mean, he got completely jungle gapped, and so the decision for me, I think, is very easy. Yeah, also you picked 𝘂𝗀 lost all 3 games today. 𝘂𝗀
is the LVP, right?
Yeah. And
they wanted 2 𝘂𝗀s in game 1 with the draft bug they had there.
I mean, if there's a 𝘂𝗀 on both sides, 𝘂𝗀 cannot lose. You know?
Yeah, you want to bet? VCS does crazy things, but okay, we'll take your 𝘀𝗀𝗻𝗺 MVP. 𝘀ci, I'll move on to you to get your MVP thoughts.
It's also 𝘀𝗀𝗻𝗺. I mean, aside from that, I want to highlight 𝘀𝗀𝗺 a little bit, because he played the game 3 very well, which was surprising to me, because it was connecting against 𝘀𝗃, which is not a matchup that Wilken has to win as hard as he did, and he really crushed this lane in the 1v1. But overall, of course, I mean, it's not 𝘂𝗀. He disqualified himself in the game 1. You could argue 1OP maybe there, because he was really the support carry in all 3 games, but it's 𝘀𝗀𝗻𝗺, let's be real. He can play anything, and he just beats every other AD carry with whatever he wants to play, and you just gotta highlight that. And 𝘀𝗀𝗻𝗺, had Cerberus on his shoulders this game, and he's one of the main reasons why they are 10-0 now.
I'm sure there's a few more unique picks that 𝘀𝗀𝗻𝗺 might be picking up before the split comes to a close. Cerberus will be playing again tomorrow against Team 𝘀, a struggling Team 𝘀, but we have another series coming up today. Team Secret taking on Saigon Buffalo, and you just thought all the Vietnamese action was already done. We're going to be jumping into a break, and we shall be back in a short bit with our second series of the day. Stay tuned.